for memeing.
Oh no, that was entirely serious.
Oh my god. Okay. Jesus Christ.
I thought it was because you didn't want to catch more gay cooties. But, yeah.
I think it's a little too late for that one, if I'm being honest.
He's got
I got all of them.
You got all of them.
He's got the most.
I treated them like Pokemon and went out and caught every single one of them. I have
That's
the
how you
world's
do
most
it.
expensive collection.
That's how you should do it.
Lean into it, buddy.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, sorry. I'm probably going to need a second to get the pop-out player going, if you don't mind.
All right. So,
there we
Chris, let me introduce you to everybody else on the panel. We have Deanne Amber.
Just Amber's fine, but
Amber's fine.
That's my Twitch.
And we have Greg of the Peer Review channel on YouTube.
Hey, man. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Greg.
And we have Gremlo, our sociologist student in southern Louisiana.
Nice. Louisiana represent.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
I was born there. I don't live there anymore, but...
Oh, I was like, Amber, where are you at in Louisiana?
No, I'm in fucking Utah, so...
Oh, okay. Nice.
Is it? Is it, though?
I've never been, so I'm just like, supposed to be really nice, like nature and stuff out there.
Nice to visit.
It's amazing.
Nice to visit.
Okay, heard that.
Especially with the ink. It's
makes sense.
I've been to Bryce Canyon. Bryce Canyon was nice. And what was the
Zion?
What the?
Yeah, I hear a lot of that.
Arches,
dude.
Angels Land. Is it Angels Landing?
There's one where it's like red
Moab.
cliffs. No, it's not Moab.
I loved Moab as a kid. The place was.
I don't remember
crazy.
what it is.
I'm actually starting a movement in California. We're going to try to make Utah the first California colony. We're going to take it over.
Please? Oh my God.
So sick. I freaking love it there.
I mean, the people here would lose their fucking minds. They would be so pissed. But,
trying to export that commie ideology
yeah, exactly.
to America's heartland.
Exactly.
They're bringing the gays.
Imperialism is never wrong, guys.
Speaking of bringing in the gays, the last person we need to introduce is
true
Professor Q. Chris, Professor Q. Professor Q, Chris.
You can call me Chris or Professor Q since we're both named Chris and that could get a little wonky. So.
All right. Well, nice.
But yeah, I'm a professor of sociology at Mizzou.
Nice.
Or University of Missouri, so.
Awesome. Well, nice to meet everyone. Greg, Amber, Gremlo, and Professor Q. And nice to meet you, Marcus.
Yes, likewise. Sorry, this is probably not the most exciting visage to gaze upon during your second appearance on the platform, but...
It's perfect. It's wonderful.
All right, I'm just about ready. We need to make Amber a frame. I feel really bad. We should sort all this out in our ministry planning meeting.
How long have I been here, Marcus?
A good amount of
4
time.
weeks now?
You're being called on the carpet.
A dozen. I can't. I have a DNA tattoo. We should be like besties. What the hell, man?
It looks sick, by the way.
Thank you. It's peeling like a bitch right now, so just trying not to like peel it too much.
So, Chris, can you tell us like, are you in high school? Like, what grade? I'm sure you probably don't want to say like where you're at, but
it's all good. I teach high school in New Orleans, so I teach juniors and seniors. I teach U.S. history.
Oh wow!
And so it's a wild time to teach history during this time. So, I've been teaching for 12 years.
Wait, are you friends with Ari?
Yes, that's how I only
You're
went on...
Chris. Oh, okay, got it.
I hope that's good because that was a whoa.
It's just like okay, so like through the grapevine, I do know you. Okay.
Yes, I've heard about you, and Ari speaks highly of you and Marcus, which is why I'm here because I've never really done Twitch, so.
Hell yeah, dude! I'm excited to hang out in New Orleans next week.
Yeah, we need to find a day where we all get together. I was telling Ari we should all go grab dinner or something.
Yeah, I think Friday the 15th is whenever we're gonna link up. Me, Ari, and my wife. We're gonna go grab like coffee and stuff and do all the New Orleans touristy stuff.
Perfect. How far away are you from New Orleans?
About an hour.
Okay, cool.
I'm in the AP area without doxing myself.
Got it. I got you. That's awesome.
I wish I lived near people that I met online. No one fucking lives here.
True. Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Vermont is just a rural. I don't want to call it a hellscape because it's not that bad, but it's basically just Bernie Sanders memes and maple syrup. That's really all that happens here.
Paradise.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds great.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too bad. Rural. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's just the memes though. There's no actual socialism. The place is run by neoliberals, just like everywhere else. It's just it's
for
the
yourself.
appearance.
I wish Utah was run by neoliberals.
Well, I mean, economically, they'll probably agree. Just socially, they seem to be a little bit, Mormon-y in Utah.
To be fair, our governor is like really for trans rights, but that's like the one issue he's not GOP on, which is kind of strange. But he talked to like a bunch of trans kids, and it like completely changed his mind about like trans kids in sports and stuff.
Nice.
So one thing can you tell us like what are the laws coming out in New Orleans? Like are you facing the wrath of the GOP? Like what's going on?
Yeah, we somewhat are. So there's at least 4 or 5 different pieces of legislation that's specifically targeting teachers and LGBTQ plus students. So we do have our own quote "Don't Say Gay" bill that's circulating where teachers are not going to be allowed to talk about sexual orientation in K through 8th grade. So they're not going to be allowed to address that. Yeah, there's another bill, which is really quite dangerous, that says that teachers and counselors have to out their trans students to their parents.
Oh my God.
And it mandates this, and it criminalizes teachers who don't do this. So that bill is circulating. There's another one that's like kind of a BS anti-CRT bill that says that teachers can't teach about tough topics that might cause discomfort or make students feel ostracized in any way. So this, protect white students' feelings. It's kind of bill. And then there's another anti-teacher bill that says we have to have all of our lesson plans done a year beforehand and turn them all in.
Holy
and then,
shit.
yeah, notify everybody when it is, if we change anything. Which, if anyone knows anything about teaching, and as you do as a professor, and it seems like there's a lot of professors on here, you're changing shit every day, all the time. You're molding stuff to your students. So that's 4 off the top of my head that I can think of that are right now circulating. And it's a pretty good...
Isn't the bill that you talked about, the Don't Say Gay bill, isn't that like longer than the one that's getting all the flack in Florida right now? Well, technically, I know the Florida bill can extend past 3rd grade, but it's K through 3rd, right?
Yeah, so you mean like the, yes, so it's K through 3rd in Florida, I believe, and in Louisiana, they extended it to K through 8th. So it's like Louisiana took Florida, saw what was going on, and said, we're going to top that. And now that's what they're trying to do.
So what's like, I mean, this is probably a dumb question to ask, but like, what's your biggest fear about all this? Like, what's the gossip in the faculty lounge, on this stuff?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of concern and fears. First, we're obviously worried about our students, right? We get into education because we care about kids. And so to have these environments where we aren't allowed to talk about certain topics, or we have to censor ourselves, or we have to out students, which I think any teacher worth their salt wouldn't do regardless of what the law says. So, the material impact is pretty intense on students. On teachers, teachers, it's already tough to get teachers into the profession in and of itself with the pay and all of the obstacles and hurdles that teachers have to go through just within teaching. So to add all these additional burdens, I think teachers are going to be on the declines. We already have a gap, right, where teachers are, we don't have as many teachers as we have. We have a massive, massive gap. So yeah, I think a lot of teachers aren't going to be coming in to the profession, which in some ways I can't blame them. If you're going to accept low pay and you're highly qualified, and then you're going to be consistently monitored and censored, and you have to deal with so much. So I think it's going to impact students, and I think a lot of teachers are going to leave the profession, which we've seen during COVID, record numbers, and then people aren't going to enter the profession. So yeah, the impact's going to be immense. We're at a precipice right now, which is why I'm here, because these are things that I want to talk about and get out.
So, I mean, I think you kind of hinted, at least in part, on what I want to ask you really to talk about, because I think there's like a central theme between a lot of this when it comes to what's going to shake down in the future. Obviously, you know, we can talk ad nauseum all night, and we should to some extent, about, you know, what it's going to be like for trans students, gay students, queer students, and of course any faculty who also happen to share these identities. But the part that really strikes me as the most worrisome, between like what Texas is doing with abortion, with all of these laws about education and what teachers can and can't say, it's the chilling effect on the propagation of these ideas that these people are real. Like the fact that we are going to see educators now going to be targeted, both in terms of what they can and can't do, and in the case of like the Texas abortion, like physicians, like even in that case, I would almost expect in some of these states too, physicians to, you know, somehow be barred from, you know, treating these people or, you know, addressing their issues in any sort of, you know, public advocacy setting. So maybe let's just kind of open this up to everybody. You know, what other dangers of all of these legislations do you really see like manifesting or possibly manifesting in all of these different states or nationwide even?
Well, it puts me in mind of just kind of the general kind of attack and repression of thought that comes along with, you know, very authoritarian regimes and countries that fall into, you know, war and genocide because of it. Because one group's decided that they know what's right and they're going to force their understanding of what is right and wrong on everyone else. And you saw this with fascist parties around the world and authoritarian leaders around the world throughout history. And unless we step up and actually push back, they're going to keep going. They've been doing this since I was, you know, a teenager. You know, that's when they first kind of coalesced in the late 70s and early 80s with Anita Bryant and the get the gay teachers out of school shit. And then the Reagan stuff, and then AIDS on top of that. That was just a big shit show that, you know, further fueled all of their bullshit. And unless you step up and start coming out, and actually that was the strategy that worked for the gay community, is coming out to achieve marriage equality. We have to be out and open and vocal about this. And if we don't, then we're going to be plugged into some, you know, hole on the ground and not allowed to stick our heads out.
Yeah.
And
The kind of, oh, I'm sorry, Professor, Dr. Winterman, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's almost like a repeat of history, right? When they wanted to get rid of gay teachers back with Anita Bryant and Jerry Falwell and the Mullen majority and stuff like that, this is the same type of thing. They want to repress the expression of other people. And it's complete bullshit. We know it's complete bullshit. It's history repeating itself within my lifetime. And I'm of two minds of it. One is I want to stand up and punch these guys right in the fucking face. And the other is I'm like, you know, they've tried this before and it didn't work and it's not going to work now. It's just, they're just going to keep trying the same old bullshit because that's all they know. And it's eventually going to fail. But in the meantime, a lot of people are going to get hurt and it's going to suck.
I think the biggest problem that with these bills and stuff is how they mask themselves as like looking out for at-risk children and adolescents, while doing things that address nothing that they're actually going through. So there's a really good review, The Health and Healthcare of Lesbian, Gay, and Bisexual Adolescents, Cocker at 2010. So they go over really interesting all the unique health indicators and health risks by LGBT youth, including substance abuse, eating disorders, suicidality, risky sexual behaviors, violence exposure, victimization, homelessness, and we're not addressing any of those issues with these bills, and it's like this huge red herring. They throw in these weird things in there, like the Florida law, the K through 3 part of that was, I was like, well, what are other states doing? So I looked in California, and I mean, California is not even teaching, sexual orientation until 7th or 8th grade anyway. So nobody's really trying to teach sex in kindergarten. So like, why even put that in there? It's just such bad faith. Like, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also being painted in such an odd way in the media. They almost paint it as if it's just these culture wars, people just disagreeing about things that seem just trivial. But as you've highlighted, the immaterial impact is so real and devastating. So even if there are a few teachers who engage in civil disobedience and say, we're not going to take part in this, it would have to be on a massive scale throughout the country. If not, this is going to seep in. And then, obviously, millions of students are going to be devastated by these policies. Imagine not being able to come out to someone that you admire or that you feel comfortable doing that with. Or imagine going through classes and never hearing your identity being validated. So it's going to have a real material impact.
To kind of play off what everyone's kind of said so far, kind of 2 points that I would like to put forward is, one, this is not happening under who we thought it would. This is not happening under the Trump administration. This is a clear indication that the opposition party is definitely not just a theory, or the controlled opposition is not just a theory. They're not doing anything at the federal level to push back on these straight up like anti-human rights pieces of legislation that are being pushed through. And I had another point, but I lost it. It really, really sucks. I don't know what exactly we can do on the ground other than, like Dr. Wynn was saying, like, get out in the streets, people who are in these positions of authority, like teachers, pushing back on this, doing walkouts, doing, organizing. It really is unfortunate because, goddamn it, I'm trying to remember and like trying to pad my words right now, trying to remember what I was going to say. It sucks. I'll come back whenever I remember what I was going to say.
The only part of this that I could add to the conversation is what's going on in the college level. Is there's a real chilling effect that's been going on for a really long time. That again traces back to a time period you lived through, Dr. Boyne, when moral turpitude clauses were used to get university professors out, and that culture still exists. I mean, I'm someone who had something happen to me in the university I taught at in Kansas, and and the thing is, this shit's never direct, right? It's always
right.
That masked as, we don't like your research, or we don't like, we don't, you're just not a good fit, right? And, and the other thing is, on the higher ed level, we were talking about this before we started, teaching evaluations have become so central to whether or not you have a job next year. And the students often come in to my classes. There's always one, at least, who I expose like the world, the real world to them, and they go, "What the hell are you doing?" Like, no, this is, you're saying my God isn't real, and kind of making it into this kind of culture war stuff, or how dare you? tell me, that race is something we should talk about. So that's what I see. And I see also a mass exodus out of academia. I think there was one university that, there's a group of about 122 university professors on Facebook that have just left academia because they said, fuck this. And I can't say that I blame them.
Yeah, I mean, we see that with teachers. They're leaving in mass droves. Every day I see on social media another teacher has left, and the polls show that teachers are leaving. I mean, like you said, I can't blame them either. Why be in a profession that is not being respected by the government? But not only that, but is actually being hindered, and teachers are facing all sorts of marginalization in terms of these bills being passed. So
are you guys unionized?
We are, yes, but I'm sure I don't know how much this gained national traction. But after Hurricane Katrina, all of these teachers, majority black teachers, were fired, and all the unions were disbanded. And what happened was they brought in young teachers from a program called Teach for America, and they made the system all charter school and disbanded many of the public schools and whatnot. And so Naomi Klein writes about this in her book Shock Doctrine. But we're still recuperating from that attack and that onslaught as well. So we are unionized, but a lot of schools in New Orleans still are not unionized, and a lot of schools around the country. And so I feel fortunate. I am a member of the union, of an NEA affiliate, but a lot of teachers don't have that ability. So if they speak out, they can get fired on the whim. If they go against any type of these rules and regulations, then they're done, and there's nothing they can do about it. They don't have any due process or anything like that.
Well, so
Louisiana is a right to work state too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so maybe I missed this while I was setting up, but I don't think we actually formally introduced Chris. Did I miss an introduction?
You did.
We just didn't introduce you to him.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
We
maybe
introduced everybody else to Chris, just not you.
Got it. Chris, maybe since you're talking about your position, maybe just restate briefly what your day job is.
Sure. So I'm a high school teacher. I teach history in New Orleans. This is my 12th year, second year PhD student in curriculum and author, and just all around love everything about education and history.
Got it. So to kind of scaffold off of what Professor Q said in terms of the unionization issue, do you think the union membership is a viable, I guess, one avenue to protect faculty against all of this? This, I guess, you could call it censorship, or the real cancel culture that's happening right now in terms of what teachers can and can't teach kids in the classroom. But one, do you think that will protect the faculty's right to actually teach? And two, do you think, more in a broad sense, that unionization of teachers, both K through 12 and maybe in higher ed, is a viable way to, I guess, push back in the greater culture war?
Oh, absolutely. So teachers that are staying in the profession, they are unionizing. So there are pockets in rural U.S. where teachers are unionizing, and they're joining AFT and NEA and these major teacher unions, because those are the institutions that are fighting back against this legislation, or doing everything that they can to fight back. So teachers that are in the profession are saying, well, if I'm at least going to be here, I might as well get some protection, even if it's marginal. I might as well at least have a semblance of protection. So 100% teacher unions are definitely there for teachers and have been fighting a lot of these struggles and these battles. With that being said, teacher unions, while the NEA is the largest labor union in the country, it still has its limits, right? I mean, it's going against big money. It's going against money from Heritage Foundation, Koch brothers, and all of these institutions. So I would say teacher unions have really stepped up to the plate in terms of trying to defeat this legislation. And that's why union membership is growing across the board with teachers. But I still think it has its limitations. It's an uphill battle for sure.
Have you talked to anybody about what useful strategies might look like? Or because I got to tell you, I have a real hard time figuring out how do we get ourselves out of this?
Yeah, so some teachers in Chicago, they've had massive teacher strikes. And what's been really interesting is how students are responding to this. Gen Z, these younger students, they're not going to sit back and just relax. So 2 weeks ago, my students organized a walkout and had over 450 students leave class in the middle of second period and go outside in the street yelling, "We say gay." And they had speeches prepared. And this was not school sanctioned or anything like that. So teachers were marking students absent, giving them zeros and stuff. And the students still went out and they protested. And the media showed up. So we've seen student activism actually increase all throughout any state. So we see this happening in Florida as well. So I'm actually curious to see how that's going to impact politics in the next 3 or 4 years when all of these kids, millions of them, are able to vote and they see what's going on and they see what's transpiring. And how, yeah, so
sorry.
Go ahead, Amber.
Go ahead, finish.
I was just saying, it's just so exciting to see the students and their reaction and activism. And so that's where I follow my students as lead. That's what I do.
I was just going to make a smart ass comment since all the boomer minds in here like shitting on the internet and you know why these kids are doing it in such large numbers? Because they learned about the shit through the internet and they were like, that's not cool. And they know that's not cool because their peers have been telling them their experiences and they have empathy from hearing others' experiences on the internet. Anyway, that was my...
Oh, yeah. You're 100% right. I had one of the students who was the main organizers. They said they found out through TikTok. And that's how they found out about these bills. And so every time I ask students, that's always through the internet. You know, they're not going home and parents aren't handing them the legislation. So it is the internet is, I know that, of course, there's all these faults with the internet, but it is shaping, I think, minds and at least making students more aware, right? And then once they're aware, then action comes after that.
You know, there's one thing that it's not an exact parallel, but if you think about the AIDS crisis throughout the 80s and the development of ACT UP in the late 80s. ACT UP became very, very effective when they started being very disruptive. And more than just, just kind of out there being seen, actually disrupting the powerful's interests. And I wonder if that will be something that the students can do, or students and teachers and whoever else might be able to do, and how they might be able to do that. Because unless you actually disrupt what it is that they're comfortable with, they're not going to get off their ass. Right? So how do you disrupt somebody like Ron DeSantis or whoever the governor of Louisiana is at the moment?
John Bell Edwards.
Yeah, and Gremplo could attest to this. John Bell Edwards is actually a Democrat who is against a lot of these bills, but the legislature is run by Republicans. So it's interesting that we actually have a governor who is against these bills, or at least says a few statements in opposition. But I think mass disruption is what needs to happen from teachers, from students, everyone who is in pre-K through 12th and even higher ed. I mean, any movement that's ever actually moved the needle was due to mass disruption. And that's what we need. And in terms of this new labor movement that's emerging, I think that we are on the verge of something really interesting in the 2020s. Because as you can see, the younger generation is much more vocal than our generation and whatnot. So mass disruption is what we need to do. How do we do it to people like Ron DeSantis? I mean, hit them where it hurts in many ways. Teachers do hold a lot of power. If we continually strike, continually push back, and then that's going to hit families because they're going to be like, wait, my child needs to go to school. Why are teachers acting in this manner? And why are students continually walking out of class? So on the education side, we can only do so much, but it will take a mass movement of disruption.
And it's difficult to break the kind of Republican voter base from the rhetoric that the GOP has been pushing out, not only over the last several years, but several decades, the professors, the teachers are the enemies, and that through our pedagogy, we're indoctrinating people into leftist thought, or trying to, turn all of our kids like autistic and homosexual in our schools. Like, this kind of shit is ingrained within the Republican rhetoric. And when they see teachers fighting back against Republican legislation, it kind of confirms that bias. And trying to break them away from that's very, very difficult.
Let's see, Marcus, the link to the video that I sent. I don't know. We don't usually show videos, but I think in terms of what we're able to do to tackle that type of issue, here they're talking about sexual orientation and gender identity and all of these other things, and they make a lot of assumptions when they made these laws. And Mike Figueroa is reporting on a couple instances where teachers are protesting by following that law.
Yeah, I think
radical
the term for that
conformity.
is,
Yes.
Yeah, it's a malicious compliance. I'm very much a fan of that term, especially in this application, right? To kind of expand on that video link you sent. It was about how I think teachers in Florida, they were pushing back against the Don't Say Gay legislation, since the wording of the actual bill entailed you can't mention sexuality at all, not gay or straight or anything. So, any references to anything with gendered pronouns, everything now is they, them, no mentions of he or she. Can't talk about women, that involves a gender, and that gender could possibly be involved in sexual activity. That's illegal. We can't do that. I think that's a pretty clever approach, especially because the law was written in such a vague way. I think maybe if, the scourge of these kinds of bills continue, I could kind of see the legislation, I think, being a little bit more targeted, especially if, say, on the national level, for example, we have Republicans in Congress and the White House in 2024. I think you're going to see a lot less hesitation to make things kind of vague with implications, kind of like Florida, and more so directly just calling things out. That's been one of my biggest fears, is sort of this like slow burn of fascism eating away at the fabric of the country. And if they see an opportunity to really go all out, I think they'll take it. I think what we're seeing right now is kind of the trial balloons being floated out. When one Republican governor does it, another one will do something similar. Same thing with abortion. We're starting to see this coalescing of actual legislation being passed and written to further the culture wars and further agitate the base at the expense of marginalized people, for sure. But I think this is kind of my question too. Like, that's one good way to engage in disruption, right? We can do what we can in the classroom to try and navigate our way around these things. However, in a broader sense, we touched on unionization. That's a viable way to enshrine protections in workplaces for faculty. But what other forms of disruption exist? Like, what comes to mind when you say mass disruption? Like, I always hear protest, walk out and go protest. But to me, that just seems like, okay, what if the people in charge ignore your protest? Then what? Like, what happens next?
Yeah, I think what the teachers in Florida are doing, that's absolutely genius. And I think it's serving as a model. So teachers at my school, we're already planning for, if this bill were to pass Louisiana, how we're going to use our rhetoric, and we're not going to talk about certain different issues and whatnot. And we're going to model a lot of that after the teachers in Florida. But also, it impacts so much, not just what teachers say or how students interact, but you have to revamp curriculum then. If you're going to take out genders, you're going to have to all standardized tests. You can't give certain standardized tests if it's going to mention anything that has to do with sexuality or sexual orientation. So you would have to revamp everything. And then teachers are going to start saying things like, I can't give this standardized test because look at the pronouns that are being used, yet the bill says XYZ. And so I think teachers are just going to start this mass disruption in little things that people seem to really care about, that teachers don't care about as much, but people in education who desire to privatize it or who desire to de-unionize it, which is something akin to test scores and numbers and quantifiable statistics. So I've heard talk about that as well. Well, almost every assessment we give mentions men, mentions women. Well, we can't talk about that. So I think there's going to be a lot of disruption on a minor scale that's going to have major impacts, because of course there's going to be protests, there's going to be student-led movements, there's going to be strikes and whatnot. But I think it's going to get really interesting to see how teachers react when they really do start having this compliance and really try to follow it, because everything is just going to get shaken up and it's going to be essentially nonsensical and it's going to be mayhem for everyone.
So one question I've been wanting to ask someone who teaches high school, there's always been what I see this as a failing of higher ed, but there has always been this kind of barrier between K through 12 and higher ed. And I feel like we could benefit from a partnership, especially right now. Have you thought about that and like what that looks like? Or basically, I guess what I'm asking is, what can I do to help you?
Yeah, I think in terms of higher ed, there's so much legislation that's out there that higher ed could fight back against as well, because at the end of the day, it impacts higher ed, right? If a student goes through high school and they never hear about gay liberation in Stonewall, or they don't hear about the Chicano movement or anything that might seem uncomfortable, and then when they get to your classes, and I think you said your sociology or someone in here, yeah, that's going to have a detrimental impact. So essentially, you'll be playing catch up with all of these students who might have these gaps because teachers are just terrified to teach certain topics. So in terms of what people in higher ed can do, I've always thought, even before this, that gap does need to be bridged for sure. But trying to help us break down a lot of complicated topics to students in ways they can understand. I've always thought, like, I read articles sometimes and I'm like, oh, I wish I could give this to my students. But then again, it's the teacher's job to break it down. But I think standing in solidarity is more than enough. Standing in support with students and teachers, joining the protests, joining the movements and the walkouts, and using whatever agency you have to, whatever platform you have to speak out. A lot of people in academia are well respected, even though, of course, people say things like Lemko was talking about with this rhetoric, this anti-teacher rhetoric also extends to anti-academia as well. But still, people in academia are much more respected in some ways than teachers. So I think it would mean a lot if people in academia actually spoke out as well. Because I think what's also really scary about this, and the professor mentioned this in the beginning, is that how fascism works this is just the start. They come for education, right? And then once you can control education, and then you start branching out and then you move. So it's not just going to be teachers and students. That's this year. In 5 years, it's going to be something else. And then it's going to keep growing until it takes over everything. So I think these bills will probably extend to higher ed very soon and beyond.
Yeah, good time to mention that the first book burnings within the Weimar Republic were literature on transgender medicine and on gender theory, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
I got a pretty good question from chat, actually. I think this is directed at you, Chris. In the notion of like speaking out and using your presence within academia to do so, to express solidarity, is it really possible to like be close to your students, especially if you happen to have any LGBTQ students like in your immediate class? Like how do you go about sort of navigating that awkwardness, especially if you're not necessarily an LGBTQ person yourself?
Good question.
Yeah, great question. Fortunately, the HB 570, which is the bill that says we have to out students, and the Don't Say Gay bill, fortunately they haven't passed yet, and I'm hoping that they don't, and maybe we can, we'll still fight, but we can take a sigh of relief. But I've been very close to students that are out to me, and they desire me to use certain pronouns or names and not their parents. And so I do have to navigate that. I literally had parent conference night a few days ago where I had to switch what I call students because they said use my birth name with my parents and whatnot. And the law would fundamentally change that or seek to change that. So yeah, I've been very close to students where they are out in class and they're proud and they want to see themselves reflected in the curriculum. I literally just taught, and this is why I mentioned it earlier, gay liberation in Stonewall on Tuesday. And that's something that if this bill were to pass and get extended to high school, that they would want nixed. So I am fortunate that I have curated relationships with students where they do feel comfortable enough to talk about it. Now, obviously, there are students that don't feel comfortable with teachers to talk about it and be open. So we see this happening where trans students have to navigate this really fine line where one class they can be themselves and the very next class they cannot. And it literally has happened in schools, especially in Louisiana and across the country. So I have been fortunate where students, I do think, feel comfortable with that. But again, that comes back to my curriculum and what I teach. When students see themselves reflected, they know that I'm not out to get anybody or will judge any students.
It's really unfortunate that it's happening in Louisiana too, because part of like a lot of the rants I go on stream is like about Louisiana and how Louisiana, we're super gay. We're very gay here, culturally, like in our our music and our it's like we're super gay. Why are we pretending like we're still holding on to this like last bastion of like social conservatism? It's very weird to me.
Yeah, screw going to San Francisco. I know that's sacrilege because it's the motherland, right, for us gay folk. But New Orleans is where it's at, man.
Oh yeah, Decadence Fest is one of the largest, gay pride. Yeah. I mean, it's just, that's what's so odd about it being in Louisiana. And it's, of course, some Republican in northern Louisiana who is just really pissed off that Trump didn't win and saw some homophobic shit going in Florida and tried to replicate that. But unfortunately, Louisiana is a very divided state as well. That's why we have a Democratic governor and a Republican legislator. So outside of New Orleans and Baton Rouge, maybe Lafayette, it's super red. And so a lot of people here in Louisiana look at New Orleans and Baton Rouge as these, liberal bastions where gay people can actually be themselves. But you're right, it's so odd that it's Louisiana because of all the places in the South, Louisiana tends to be associated more with that lifestyle than other places.
It's a little more degenerate than our contemporary Gulf South states. It's also weird because our Louisiana Democratic Party, the chairman is a Republican. It's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
I have a question. Someone in my chat brought up like in higher education that doesn't even seem possible to like cut things that may ostracize a white student. Like would a history teacher in high school just like cut out teaching slavery, or would it be a whitewashed version of it, or like how do you think they would end up navigating that?
We're so far behind sometimes in terms of curriculum development that in Louisiana, the high school curriculum started at 1877. So if you were taking U.S. history in Louisiana, you would start at 1877 and go forward. And you were supposed to get everything before 1877 in 6th and 7th grade. So millions of students never even learn. And this is not just Louisiana. This is across the country, how states divide U.S. history into two sections. So there are millions of students that go throughout high school and they don't even learn about slavery in high school. So if they don't go to college, they just, repeat what they've heard. That just changed this year. So that's a battle we just, got finished fighting. And then all of this happens. It would be hard pressed to find a history teacher who somehow cuts out those issues. Fortunately, I never listened to the curriculum in Louisiana. I always had my own curriculum, and a lot of teachers did that. So I did teach it for sure. Yeah. And it would be tough for a teacher to try to navigate teaching the history of the United States without mentioning slavery or capitalism.
That's so interesting because like I was born in Louisiana, but I grew up in South Carolina, and I went there until like 3rd or 4th grade. And I still vividly remember one of my field trips was to a plantation where we learned how cotton was cleaned before the cotton gin, and they had us all doing it. And like we learned about slavery, but a very whitewashed, like we had animated movies about a black woman, a slave, escaping with, you know, her white master and just bullshit like that. And third
Very
grade.
romanticized.
Yes, it was disgusting looking back at it, but like third grade, you're like, oh, cute.
Yeah, we went over a excerpt from a Louisiana history textbook today on stream that was talking about the struggles that this family had to go through while the Civil War was going on, and how they became refugees, had to move 120 of their slaves over to Texas, you know, and how difficult it was for them.
Ah, yes.
When they could no longer own their slaves, that was very pitiful. I was drawn to tears by that story for those poor refugees.
Yeah,
you know, ex-slave owners. Ugh.
Yeah. You know, it's so fascinating. I have students in my class today that their middle school field trips were going to plantations and literally picking out cotton to see and feel it. And it's like teachers are traumatized, essentially traumatizing students. And Gremko, it sounds like a textbook written by the Daughters of the Confederacy, because that's the kind of narratives they certainly pushed. Fortunately, I don't.
The author is a current professor at LSU.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it seems super recent. Fortunately, I don't use a textbook, so I actually don't even bother with textbooks anymore. I've tried, and it's just, with the internet, you can go straight to the primary source and just tackle it from there.
Chris, I'm curious about this disclosure law that you guys might be subject to, where you have to tell the parents of a trans kid if they're trans or not. What is that, and how does it work?
Yeah, so it's a bill that's currently being debated in the Louisiana legislature, House Bill 570. And essentially what it says is that trans students are not allowed to have any types of surgery, even if their parents okay it, which is absolutely awful. You know, in terms of education, it says that if a trans student comes out or desires to use different pronouns or a different name, then not just the teacher, but a teacher, counselor, social worker, administrator, any adult in education has to immediately notify the parents. And if teachers don't, or if adults don't do that, then they are breaking the law.
That's so dangerous.
It's absolutely dangerous. It could ruin a kid if teachers and counselors do this.
Our teenage homeless rate is extremely high here, and it's almost like majority LGBTQ kids, because the church is so prominent here. And like, if you're LGBTQ, it's not even computable, and they just can't have you around, and it's so fucking disgusting. Ugh.
I mean, it's just frightening. Like, I think maybe Winwood might be able to relate to this, and I think this touches on what he was saying earlier. But, like, for someone like me, I kind of definitely grew up in a more, I guess, privileged setting where it was kind of the right time in, like, the early mid-2010s, especially once gay marriage got legalized. Like, that was at least to me, it felt like a pretty safe time to, like, come out and be out. But, you know, from this point onwards, after all of this, you know, legislation has been unveiled, you know, it seems like we're seeing some, you know, renewed zeal from conservatives to try and, you know, drive us back into the closet or out of existence. So, you know, it feels very, like, visceral, and I think for me it's really the first time that I'm experiencing sort of this visceral pushback. But for people in older generations than me, like, it's almost like that meme, you know, with the people at the gallows and the one guy with the rope around his neck turns and says, "Hey, first time." Like, I feel like I'm the other person in that meme right now. Like, it's just wild in terms of perspective to, like, look back and see that, you know, we're not doing the same thing, but this kind of rhymes. Like, this is a rhyming part of history, and we're making the same old damn mistakes. It's wild. I think one of my chatters too is saying the same thing because they're trans and they're an older trans person. They just couldn't imagine what trans kids are going through right now.
And I mean, the data on this is insane. So in that review I was talking about earlier, the quote, the authors found that the high school students who either reported same-sex partners or self-identified self-identified as LGB were more likely to report homelessness compared with the heterosexual peers, 16% versus 3%. And then later on in the review, in unadjusted analysis, the homeless LGB youth were more likely to report a suicide attempt, 62% versus 29%, survival sex, 19% versus 8%, binge drinking, 42% versus 27%, or intravenous drug use, 23% versus 13%. Shocking numbers.
If you want some more dramatic numbers, look up the numbers for trans youth. It's even higher. It's something like 87% of all trans youth have tried to commit suicide.
Yeah, the Trevor Project put out a lot of numbers within the last few years about that. And I agree with what you're saying, Marcus, in terms of it seeming a little new. I feel like this is my 12th year of teaching, and we've always had bills that have tried to make life shitty for teachers, right? More standardized testing, less planning time. Common Core, yeah, things like that and whatnot, which there's nowhere near as bad as all of these other bills.
Yeah.
But they did have some issues with that for sure, especially how quick it was rushed out. But what's really scary about this, and what I think is motivating so many people, is the attack on students. It just seems like such an asshole thing to do. I don't know how else to say it. Like, yeah. Teachers, it was awful what people have tried to do to teachers for so long, both Democrats and Republicans for decades, since, for the times that people were talking about here. But now to go after students just because you want to win some culture war or get cheap votes, it's asinine, to say the least.
I mean, the suffering is the point, right? I mean, and this is in the cycle of outrage manufacturing. We had in the last decade, it was cultural Marxism, then Antifa, then CRT. Now it's or trans bathrooms before that. And now we're seeing success in being able to put forward like anti-LGBT legislation forward. And that's what they're gonna, focus in on, because that's where they're getting a measure of success. Don't want to down everybody.
No. I mean, you're right.
Topic.
We kind of have to, do a fair amount of abyss gazing for the panel. We just got to talk about it. But I think I was talking to one of my chatters about this too. On the issue of curriculum, it feels like that is almost like a next target. I think that also makes it really important to develop an actually proper curriculum that acknowledges and validates the existence of LGBTQ people in general, and obviously teaches major historical events surrounding their advocacy historically and contemporaneously. But it feels like sort of in the same vein that we saw, you can't teach about slavery, or you can't take down the statues, but don't tell anybody why the statues are there. It seems like that's next. To me, that's kind of how I feel emotionally. Stonewall is going to get stricken from curriculums. If schools teach these things, they're going to lose AP accreditation and stuff like that. It feels like they're actually fully waging a war on education. Before it was just, a bunch of culture war, virtue signaling, and, college is a libtard factory. And now people who actually leave college with an idea of people are valid and we shouldn't hurt them. But now this seems different. I think that's what I'm trying to say. This seems very different and a lot more personally targeted at education, educators specifically.
I forgot. I got sidetracked. Grandma, I was going to say, I think the desire for suffering more comes from either the legislatures themselves, but from where I'm standing, it more seems like these are abstract issues because they haven't had to deal with this or someone near them personally being LGBTQ, and so it's more okay in their mind to exact this kind of legislation because they don't see the consequences. It's just an abstract libtards getting mad on TikTok or whatever about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this kind of goes into something I was trying to remember to say earlier when I drifted off. That I say this all the time, but the the social forces push the culture pushes legislation, the legislation solidifies the culture. Within the broader culture war, quote unquote, if we're going to use that term, the right sees LGBT people being normalized as like a big issue within their battle. And if they can solidify their aspect of the culture war within legislation, well, that puts a stopgap measure towards, social forces pushing that culture back. So, yeah, I mean, I do agree with you that it's exposure, that, they're not around these type of people. That's part of it, sure. But within the broader narrative, I mean, when we start seeing PragerU or Daily Wire Kids videos within school curriculums, that's when we know, like, they are winning.
Are they pushing that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my God.
They're absolutely winning, and they were winning before. I mean, even to just get Stonewall or LGBTQ plus history in the curriculum was a struggle in and of itself. If you look at all the curricula across the country, you're not going to see a lot of perspectives that are of people who are not white, and that has always been an issue in education. So as people continually fight and advocate to get history to be taught and to get new perspectives in, it's a struggle. And what we see now is a reaction to people actually getting new voices into the curriculum. So this does seem to be like a really intense backlash. And I think both of it's true. I think a lot of these politicians are separated from trans students, right? I mean, like you said, the governor of Utah, all of a sudden, he is pro-trans or something along those lines because
he vetoed a bill that passed through all other channels that would have not allowed for transgender athletes to play on gendered sports teams. And he brought up the stats. He was like, there are 4 trans kids playing on sports teams. Only one of them is playing on the gender's team that they identify as. Like, we do not need a law for this. These 4 people who just want to live and be accepted and have camaraderie in sports.
Yep.
Yeah, just exist as actual children and do things that kids love to do. And I think even if it's not about suffering or making students suffer, they have to know that is the material impact. They have to know it. They hear what people are saying.
Well, it's about scapegoating, right? It's about creating that other that you can toss all of your sins on and send out into the wilderness, right? And totally forget them and send them on their way. And now you're a clean community because you no longer have these people there or that scapegoat. And this is something that's been around for thousands of years. This is just the particular form it's taking now. And it's kind of ridiculous that we can't get past this as adults or as a culture. But for some reason, we have this need to create the other and scapegoat them in some way. And, even I wanted to mention something that in the early 90s, when we were fighting the first gay marriage fights in Hawaii, right? I had friends involved directly in that activism. And I was living in the Marshall Islands at the time, so I was close to it, but not directly involved. And the attitude of the right-wingers was that, well, this is an equal application of the law. Everybody can get married, right? You just, if you're a man, you have to marry a woman. And if you're a woman, you have to marry a man. And equal application of the law, right? And now they're in a situation where they've crafted a law that what their problem is that equal application of the law does not mean equal protection of the law. And equal protection of the law is what is right and proper and considered valid. Now they've created a situation for themselves where they expected there to be, an equal application of the law. Well, they didn't expect an equal application of the law. They expected that the laws that they're passing now are going to target a particular group, but be phrased in a neutral language so that, it applies to everybody. Straight people can't come out as, whatever. And I think that they are I don't know. It's a bit confused because their motivation isn't to do what's right; it's to scapegoat, and I think that's confusing a lot of what they do, and it's just making them mean. But we shouldn't put up with it. But I don't know. I'm rambling.
No,
I think that's a fair point. There's a book, The Anatomy of Fascism, and there's a whole chapter on the tactic of scapegoating. And that's the essence of fascism. You create this other, you rally people around this other, and then once you mobilize, you can get legislation pushed and continue to grab more power, and then continue to scapegoat. And I think in some ways it's a failure of education in the United States, and a failure of not teaching proper history or teaching from textbooks or teaching just lecture-only classes, that we have an entire population that cannot recognize scapegoating tactics.
Yeah.
Because it continually happens over and over again.
Well, it's also
and they're constantly they're constantly reinforced in their communities of worship, right? Especially the extreme conservative right-wing faiths. They continually reinforce it. It's not that they just accept it.
I mean, it depends. I wouldn't generalize it like that. I mean, like, I talk shit on Mormons a lot, but they don't. I mean, I guess they engage in ignoring rather than like scapegoating onto marginalized people. So I guess it's a bit of a different view, but yeah.
More like hardline evangelicals certainly go about that, but your normal congregation like usually isn't. It's the demonic forces that are turning your kid trans, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, scapegoating through shunning is still exclusion.
Certainly. And broken record here to go to the point of scapegoating. It's also recognizing that if you're the kind of, if we recognize that these social forces are within media, within our pedagogy, are teaching us these certain things, they're obfuscating from history, they're doing whitewashing. Well, if all of that's happening, well then what else about my worldview is incorrect? It's the capitalist realist thing. It's easier to imagine the end of the world. What does that do to someone's psyche whenever you break them down from their entire upbringing, from the entire way that they've been crafted as a person throughout their environment, throughout their teaching, throughout their upbringing within their social circles? Whenever you do that, they feel like they are being attacked. That's their entire life. When you're an American, all you have is those little things.
You've just described the experience of every gay kid in a homophobic culture.
Mm-hmm.
We go through that. We've been through that multiple times.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for some reason they don't want to recognize it. They want to otherize us. And I don't know. I don't know how to get beyond it, because there's something very deeply embedded within our psyche, within our either biology or culture, that drives us to do some of this stuff. And I don't know how to get around it.
I mean, it's like a call for sociology.
Yeah, it's advocacy. It's education.
Let me rip off my shirt.
Yeah, just a big S right there. I mean, it's advocacy. It's normalizing that these things are not it's some abstraction. They're not some kind of outlier thing. These are people in your community. They're the people who serve your food. They're the people who work alongside you. It's normalizing. It's the same shit that what you guys grew up with. It's so much harder to do now because media is so permeated through in every aspect of these kids' lives. Amber's right. The internet is a great vehicle for advocacy and for mobilizing and organizing people, but in the opposite direction, it also is a great tool for our ideological opposition.
But I would say that the culturally, the GOP is lost, man. These bills are kind of like the death rattle of this dying ideology. And, it feels like we have to kind of transition from like a protest movement idea into like action items, kind of like what Marcus is saying like earlier. What can we do when protests are, after a protest? And it's like, a lot of these states, you can actually become a state senator, a state House of Representative at 18. So like Louisiana is 18 for the Senate and the House. So like these high school seniors going straight from these classes right into the legislature and passing bills, just like they're trying to do with these queer bills, doing the opposite, like actually passing real solid legislation.
I can hear the anarchists in my chats making their fingers bleed typing on the keyboards right now about things that you can do. But it's very difficult, I would say, for a kid fresh out of high school to go into local politics or state legislatures and start doing things that are, in the positive direction. I want that, but particularly in these like red-locked states, that's asking to get, strung up.
I think it's just the money behind Louisiana politics. It's a lot of big oil and sugar and so many different industries, petrochemical. So it would be tough for students to do that. Not impossible, though. There are younger people in Louisiana who are running for office. But
Gary Chambers, let's go.
Yes, I love Gary Chambers. I saw him when he visited New Orleans. He's a force, and if we can get behind people like that, that would be incredible. If more people like that ran on the local level, we have a few people in Baton Rouge. I think that could shake things up and change it a bit. But I do hope this does radicalize people and get them not just to run for office, but to have massive movements as well, wherever they go. So running for office is definitely a good idea to stop these bills.
Yeah.
Yeah, another, I guess, I don't know if I'll phrase it as a question, but this is just a general concern. And Gremlo, I think you actually saw me tweeting about this either yesterday or the day before.
So.
But typically with any movement, whether it's BLM or gay pride or anything else, the cops are always going to be weaponized against it. So, I think, of course, it's a wonderful idea to try and spark a movement to oppose the current flood of anti-gay legislation. But I think we would be naive if we didn't expect, if we're out and about protesting, to see the police actually mobilized in full force to try and, show up to these protests and kettle them, corral them, beat them, arrest them, and whatnot. I guess the question is, is this going to be another, I guess, like the Stonewall, so to speak, because that was technically a riot. Like the police were there, people were fighting back against the police. Are we going to have to suffer in the same way to really make the advocacy what it is or what it should be? Like, are we going to have to fight the police too? Should we expect to fight the police?
Yeah, that's such a great point, because I think what people miss sometimes in Stonewall, and I kind of had to tell my students this, is that people beat the shit out of police for like days. They were fighting back, throwing the purses, bricks, like they were really going at it. And then all of a sudden, people were not as terrified to be out anymore. There was liberation parades from Stonewall to, Central Park. And I will say, in many ways, that did push the needle when people realized, wow, people aren't going to take it anymore. They're actually fighting back. They're engaging in something more than just nonviolent action. Even the civil rights movement, if you look at Malcolm X's impact on it, as soon as he got to Selma, they released MLK from prison, and LBJ made a statement, and then the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. It was like one thing after another started unraveling once. And the NAACP in Mississippi was like, actually, we're going to shoot back if people keep shooting at us. And once those statements and these people started to get involved in the civil rights movement, things started to pass. I mean, there's a reason why the Fair Housing Act of 1968 was passed during the King assassination riots. And I think that's missed when we talk about history a lot, is the needle moves quick when people act in ways that cause mass disruption.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay within Twitch TOS with this, but I'll say this. It took millions of people to get a trial for George Floyd, marching in the street, breaking shit all over the country, RIP to half the country. But it took that much to get one cop convicted and his buddies, whatever they got. It took that much. In the larger scale of history, direct action, whether violent or non-violent, it's a mix of the two, has to happen. There's going to have to be, within this moment, and I would predict within the next year or two, we're going to see some mass mobilization happening, ideally on a very large scale, to push back on this, because it's quite clear that, at least from the federal level, there's no support. So it has to come from the ground up. There has to be labor action. There has to be like student walkouts, teacher participation in those kinds of protests. There has to be, like Marcus said, people are going to go toe to toe with the police. That's going to happen. They are the first line of defense in these institutions. It's going to happen. I would prefer to see it happen non-violently, though.
So, one thing I want to go back to, or at least emphasize for chat, for anybody watching, students always have the most power. And I tell all my students this in class, that you guys have all the power. Once you get inside the institution, it fucking sucks, man. Like, our ability to change stuff is like non-existent. So these high school students doing these walkouts, that always gives me some hope. But I would love to see, again, I'd love to see something on a bigger, grander scale with, walkouts on college campuses and other things.
Yeah, like a mass general strike, but within education. And you're so right about being in the institution and kind of being stumped so many times. I mean, our school didn't back this student walkout, so they told us, mark students absent. This is not, school sanctioned and whatnot. So teachers had to engage in civil disobedience and mark students present who were out protesting, or leave the class themselves and whatnot. And teachers did do that, but it is a lot harder when you're in an institution and you're worried about your job or getting fired or anything like that. So I tell my students the same thing, that they have so much agency that they just need to really exercise it.
The Zoomers are all right. They're going to be okay. They've got a good head on their shoulders these days, I think.
Yeah, polls show they collectively believe in climate change, and they are, not supportive of a lot of this legislation. So I agree. I have a lot of hope for this generation. Sometimes as a teacher, people are always like, how do you teach kids these days? And blah, blah, and they'll say the most awful things about teachers. And it's always so confusing, because I think the exact opposite. I'm like, I only have
Thank you. I've been saying this for like years. Anyway,
yeah,
continue.
No, I appreciate that. I literally only have hope because I teach high school kids. That's why I have hope for the future. That something is going to change along the way. So I do have, yeah.
Those middle schoolers, on the other hand.
Oh, well, that's
demons.
Hey, we can't. They can't help it. They're going through the phase.
Yeah, they're going through the shit right now.
Yeah.
Oh man, I hate that age.
Yeah.
Same.
Oh my god.
What's that,
I was
like 11
almost
to 14?
I was obsessed with Twilight. Can't get much worse than that.
Yeah, I'm not even enamored with the high school age. That I like the young ones. Kindergarten through second grade maybe, and then university students. But anything in between, leave me out of it.
Oh, mad respect to anyone who teaches, kindergarten and first grade, those grades. Okay, mad respect to your wife. I've been in some of those classrooms, and just to get sneezed on and whatnot, and like, a lot of getting used to. I taught middle school for 5 years, and yes, that was the hardest job of my life, no doubt.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I just think the little ones are so much fun. I mean, they have so much energy and enthusiasm and naivete, and they just want to play and learn, and it's so exciting. So I love teaching them, but
well, it's almost for that same reason they're passing the legislation, right? Like they think we're corrupting the children.
Yeah.
Thanks to QAnon.
But this is kind of the problem, right? I mean, the problem that we're having, I feel like, and I see this rising up with both sides, honestly. I hate to say that, but it's true. This, like, penchant for authoritarian means and abandoning legislation, abandoning democracy as a way of getting things through, you know, and it's like, it's always going to be nice and it's going to feel productive and efficient to look at authoritarian means to get things through. But, you know, if you want systemic change and really to change the institution, then I feel like that's how you do it with actual legislation, with getting people involved, with getting involved at local levels in city halls and getting on those boards, getting on the, doing, like, actually volunteering and taking those jobs at the state legislatures and stuff, just like that these people are doing. Like, the GOP has been very successful at the state and local levels, and I feel like we can replicate that. Look at they're doing so well, you know, at getting this stuff through. Like, try to steal their success for our own ways.
Absolutely.
Well, you need to have a big bank account behind you, and the left doesn't have that, or even the center doesn't have that.
Yeah,
they have that on the right. They have that organizational money that gets filtered in to their groups and the different, like the ALEC group, the American Legislative Exchange Council, and
Heritage Foundation,
all of these different
Judicial
groups.
Watch.
They have all this money, and they foster these, astroturf movements, and just continually drive the rhetoric. On the left, we don't have those financial backers, and we rely on people power, which is a good enough thing if you can find enough people with enough time and resources to contribute to it. But people are so starved of time and resources that it's such a big hill to climb.
Yeah. This was a conversation I had with James from the internet either yesterday or the day before yesterday about the kind of fractionalizing of American society right now, where people are moving from their conservative areas, their kids, like, is LGBT or whatever it is, or they're just tired of being around racist people. They move into a liberal safe haven. And on the other side of the coin, that's also true, where people are moving from these liberal coastal elites into, Texas and free Florida. And, now they're around people who don't wear masks, and they're all giving each other COVID and bronchitis. And, that's freedom. This abandoning of the communities that people are in only further gives root to the fractionalizing. Those people that you're they're leaving, you're leaving other people who are sympathetic. You just have to put in the time. But to Dr. Buenawin's point, it's expensive to be an activist. It's expensive to, try and change the society that you're in. It requires time. It requires energy. It requires your mental health, your physical health at times. It's very tough, and I don't know how we put a stop to that. How do we, say, okay, well, we need to dig our heels in and say, like, no, we're not going to let the conservatives take over. It's very hard.
I want to push back just a little bit on this, because I saw that conversation without getting too sidetracked. But one of the things, so actually, let me just ask you, Chris, are you guys getting rural areas involved? I'm very concerned about this rural-urban divide that's part of this conversation, and how we can kind of include those more rural and suburban areas in this activism.
Well, fortunately, and this kind of goes back to Greg's point about how a lot of both parties are to blame in this. Fortunately, teachers' unions do exist in rural places, and I used to teach in a conservative area, and the strongest and only union, if I can recall, was the teachers' union. So teachers' unions do exist, and they are strong in rural areas. So there is some sort of foundation there. But to go back to that point mentioned about both parties, because it's easy sometimes, I think, to dunk on Republicans, but Democrats for so long have been against, at least from the 1980s and 90s on, we're against teachers unions, and we're pro charter schools and pro school choice and pro voucher systems, and they
We
were
only
pushing...
have one party, two
Exactly.
flavors.
Exactly. So even all of this money is not just going to Republicans, but ALEC money and Heritage Foundation money is going to Democrats, who are also pushing initiatives to weaken teachers unions. And it's kind of remarkable that teachers unions, I know they're not perfect, obviously, they have their issues, have survived this onslaught, and not only survived, but thrived. NEA is the largest labor union in the country. So I do think in rural areas, teachers unions can serve as a foundation for this style of activism, because teachers in rural areas also like a decent living wage. They also enjoy time to lesson plan and to have health care. And so they see who is fighting for them, which I think is a microcosm of so many issues at play, right? When the labor movement actually does shit for workers, they can draw in people from across the aisle. And that's why the NEA and the AFT still exist in rural Kansas and rural Louisiana. And so I do see what you're saying about the rural-urban divide, and I find it fascinating that teachers' unions still exist in those places and still fight for teachers. So if we had a massive labor movement, which is why I'm really excited about the unionization of so many different corporations within the last few years, then I think we can see that activism. So in education, it's already there.
That's a big part of this conversation that gets left out. Is like when these pieces of legislation are being pushed through. Yes, of course, it's targeting kids, and it's making teachers, it's making their jobs more difficult. But this is an attack on workers. If this was truckers that were being told they couldn't, I don't know, whatever the equivalent would be, or like railroad operators or pipe fitters or welders that were being told they couldn't do their job a certain way, we would be having a giant hissy fit in the GOP. These are workers who are an essential part of our society. These are teachers. This is the first part of educating the next generation, and we're trying to prevent them from being able to do their jobs correctly over some made-up culture war nonsense. This is ridiculous.
It's so out of touch because they recognize, I can't remember what politician said this, I'll have to Google it, but people were bringing up the point, teachers are leaving in droves already. You're just going to continually increase this gap. And he said something along the lines of, we're going to start bringing retired teachers back in to save the day and give them bonuses and whatnot. And other politicians were jumping on board. Yeah, bring back the other teachers that weren't about all of this CRT and whatnot. And it's like, you think those teachers are going to come back right now with everything going on? There's a reason why a lot of them retired. And so there's just this massive disconnect that's going on.
I mean, it's a tragedy of the common scenario, right? Where we haven't invested into education for so long, and you have, the first thing to be cut is the science and the arts because field trips are expensive and materials cost money, and now we have a whole population of people that are just learning about PCR and RNA for really the first time during a global pandemic.
I mean, one of the last times we had a major federal push, I mean, we've had them since, but one that was just like billions of dollars was the NDEA after Sputnik was launched. And the United States freaked out and was terrified that they were falling behind. So they just poured billions into education. And it worked in many ways. It started to actually to succeed. So, since the 50s, we haven't seen this massive push at that level. And I think we're paying the price.
Well, I think the reason why we haven't seen that massive push is because they've convinced themselves that the best way to do it is to hand it over to private interests and let private interests do it. The whole neoliberal, mindset is privatize everything, and government can do no right, and so I think that's why they refuse to do it. They've convinced themselves that the neoliberal way of doing things is the best way of doing it.
Yeah, it's the Paul Weyrich goo government 1985 speech. A lot of good Christians are convinced themselves that there can be such a thing as good government. And it's ridiculous. They nationalize our education industry. Outlaw private schools. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of what I guess Finland's success is driven by is they do not allow private schools, right? So every student has to go to a public school, and that means that every rich student has to go to a public school. So their parents want to make sure that they're being well educated, so they don't mind contributing tax money to that system because they're forced to use it.
Yep. The cobbler's son and the stockbroker's son go to the same school. That's the kind of shit we need.
Well, the benefit of that is that there's commonalities and problems within the system all across the country, right? So we fix a problem over here, it's going to fix the problem over there. That's the benefit of a public school system, right?
Yep.
Right, but we've been, having this fight of, local versus federal, and the state in between, since our founding, and so it's not something that's going to go away very easily. It's going to persist. There's going to be always some type of tension, and this especially happens in education between local control of what is taught and how it's taught versus federal standards that are foreign and imposing and, obviously wrong because it's not local and it doesn't conform to the parents' wishes or the local community's wishes.
That's something that go ahead, Greg. I'll finish. I'll do my thing after.
I mean, one of the strongest forces in education for the entire nation is the Department of Education of Texas, because they have such a control of like the amount of books, and all these other states copy them, and it's crazy.
Yeah. I want to ask this question to all of the educators in the call. This rhetoric we hear coming from the GOP who are pushing these pieces of legislation is that teachers have been cutting out parents from the conversation for far too long. How do we feel about that?
Yeah,
I
again,
think
it's
it's
just
been the opposite.
Yeah, I was just about to say, interestingly enough, with the internet, we are even more transparent than ever before. You can literally find my Google Calendar. It's public. You can see what I'm teaching every single day. My lessons are on Google Docs, lesson plans. I share them with parents. With the internet, it's almost as if parents can see exactly what I'm doing literally every single day. And I think that's what's going on with teaching across the board. So again, that's another talking point. We talked about a lot of this rhetoric coming from the GOP in terms of CRT and these talking points that are entirely fabricated and designed to give force to these AstroTurf movements. So yeah, I mean, in a way, that's also to push school choice as well. Make parents seem like, oh my God, we don't have a choice in the book that my child reads. Well, then we must, mobilize to get the funds out of these schools and into a private institution. So I also think that goes back to the point as a reason why education is not funded is because we have so many private schools. So if millions of kids are going to private schools, their parents aren't going to want to support any type of legislation that's going to increase funding. And the majority of politicians, their kids go to private schools, so they have no personal incentive to do this. Which also goes back to why does the United States have so many private schools compared to other countries? And a lot of that is because of blatant racism during white flight, which saw the increased enrollment in these private schools. But to go back to your question, definitely another clever talking point that is divorced from reality. Yeah.
I mean, like even just being married to a teacher, it seems like to me, one, this is a labor issue, but two, it's like kind of the where the realities don't match each other. The reality that we hear in the talking points and the one that we see on the ground are not matching, because I see my wife wake up at 6 and until like 8, 9 o'clock is still doing work. On the weekends is answering emails and phone calls from parents. It's like never ending. So it doesn't seem like there's a lack of parents being involved. It seems like there's, I would even argue, too much, because it's, I was kind of talking to my chat about this today during stream, how within education, there's kind of a pyramid. There's parents, students, teachers, and you could kind of lump in state with the teachers, because if you're going in public school, that's part of a state education system. And if you take away one of those, yeah, the thing collapses. But also, if you have more than one, well, it's not stable anymore.
Yeah, it's a weird like attention to, like, for example, I can show you 50 unread text messages from my kid's school, like blowing me up every day about like stuff. So, but then at the same time, like, I don't know how anyone that has a kid that can't drive has a full-time job, because I mean, they're getting let out so early. So it's like, it's really frustrating where the experience of the teacher is that like 12-hour day, 16-hour day. But then like as a parent, you're like, man, my kid can't even go to school for 8 hours a day. Like I can't even do a full shift of work while he's at school. So it's like there's kind of like a mismatch where we really need to put way more funding into schools so that we can have like a teacher shift, or I don't know what happens. They need to be able to go to school a little longer.
There's a lot that goes into it too, because it has to do with investing in community programs. It has to do with how we do city planning, public transportation. There's like everyone has to either ride the bus or your parents picking you up in the car line, because there's no walking to school. There's no taking like public transportation to and from these certain areas. There's no after school programs other than typical football. And then, hey, you're picking up your kid at 7 p.m. at night. You know, you're trying to do dinner and homework and everything. Everyone has no time.
I mean, just on this call alone, if I refresh my work email, I have at least 5 parents who have emailed me and genuine actual concerns that I want to make sure that I get to, even if it's past the clock, because we actually do care. Most teachers do. But not to oversimplify it, but in many ways, funding really could just change the game. If you had a few more teachers, then class sizes dwindle, then the teacher workload drops, and then maybe we won't have to wake up as early or have as many papers to grade, or our lessons don't have to, be as differentiated as we have to make them to cater to students' needs. So the solutions are there, and we see it in Finland, in Japan, in Sweden. We see it from the countries who have the best, I don't want to use scores, but on every metric seem to be outperforming us. And it's because they are societies that heavily invest in education. When I travel and I tell people I'm a teacher, they always say the most amazing things. And then when I say it in the States, it's kind of like, oh, what are you going to do after teaching? Or, oh, kids these days. And it's such a weird culture, for lack of better terms, because teachers seem so... I remember in China, people were saying, you teach, your country's history, you are carrying the legacy of so many people on your back. That's a lot of responsibility. And they would say these things that made me feel like, wow, yeah, I'm really doing something important. And then in the States, people are like, but are you teaching this? Are you teaching that? And all of a sudden it's politicized and devalued. It's fascinating what propaganda has done.
That's how we feel as scientists. Everyone's like, oh, you're a scientist. Wow, that's so cool. And then COVID hit and they're like, you're just a bunch of academic, high and mighty fucking liars.
You're one of Fauci's agents, aren't you, brother? Trying to get me to wear a mask.
You made up mRNA. It's just DNA all the way down.
Working for that CDC, the Communist Distribution Committee.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, so the parallels are real. People have asked me if I'm a full-fledged communist or cultural Marxist. People at bars have asked me these things, and I'm just like, wow, like that's the first thing you think of when you think of U.S. history teacher.
Cultural Marxism. It's automatic.
That's fucking wild.
It's very weird, like in the United States, how we fund education too through property taxes. When you say that you have to increase your taxes now in order to like pay for education, like what? Like we don't do that with anything else. Like we don't do that with like the Department of Defense budgets isn't tied to property taxes. It's like we just fund it because we think that there's an inherent worth to it. So then that's where the budgeted money goes. But why tie education to taxes? The property taxes specifically. It's so weird.
Well, there's a racist reason behind some of that.
I was about to say
we all
that.
went to the same spot.
I just looked up a study, and so obviously, if you live in a place with where people aren't paying a lot of property taxes, the education is going to be defunded, and then rich places like the suburbs in Boston and whatnot, obviously, it's going to be heavily funded. And the gap that causes, I know this study, and I just looked it up. according to a nonprofit EdBuild, the funding between predominantly white school districts with districts that serve mostly students of color is $23 billion a year. That's the gap, and that's 2,226 less for a student of color than a white student. Like, this is massive gaps. It doesn't say annual, by the way, so I don't know if it's annually. I just pulled it up just now when you said that.
But I thought we cured racism in 1964.
Right, my bad. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's fake news stuff.
Right.
Speaking of which, so I'm kind of interested to I have to ask this question. Has the whole QAnon thing been an issue where you're at within K through 12?
You know what's interesting is, and I taught in a conservative area, I've only received one question about QAnon in 12 years. And NPR actually interviewed me about this because they were wondering what teachers were doing about the rise in QAnon. And in my teaching career, it's almost non-existent. One student just asked a question because it was about the Comet Pizzagate situation. I don't even know, in like 2015, where a dude opened up on a pizza shop because he thought it was a predatory Clinton.
Hillary Clinton's getting the babies down there with the adrenochrome.
Yep.
Right.
In the basement of a pizza restaurant.
They didn't have a basement.
Yeah, I know. In the basement.
I don't really get that much, and I don't want to be, too pro Gen Z, but it doesn't seem like, I could be 100% wrong, but just as my anecdotal experience as a teacher, it doesn't seem like Gen Z is buying this as much. And when I watch documentaries and videos, it does seem like it's a lot of older people that are believing these things. So it's not an issue for me, fortunately, in education, because that would be another annoying thing to have to navigate, right? If students come in believing that, or if they do, they haven't said it.
I think where the kids are kind of going is more towards like hyper nationalism, because at least within like the work that I do, I use giant air quotes for that. Most of the younger people, 14 to like 22, are in like online incel, like hyper nationalist, Groyper, that kind of stuff communities. So maybe the QAnon stuff is not getting to them, but there is like subcultures where like pseudo fascist stuff is starting to creep in.
Yeah, I had a student falling through the alt-right pipeline last year in my class. I remember that. It made for some really interesting conversations. And he's a senior now, and he visits my class one lot, and we talk. But he was clearly falling down this pipeline and reiterated a lot of talking points. And he was saved by teachers and his peers and whatnot. And now he is, I swear, one of the brightest students that I've ever taught. It's wild to see his trajectory. Awesome. I mean, he comes to my class and talks about all these different books, and he's bright. But I think that's why education is so important, right? What if this student and students across the country go through this YouTube pipeline, and then they go into these other websites, and then they go to school, and the teacher was like, actually, we can't really talk about that here. So, sorry. And then that kid's just going to say, oh, well, the teacher's not going to push back on my ideas, even though they're blatantly wrong.
I'll keep going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you shut them down, Chris?
I'm like, you're wrong. That's enough. No, I'm just kidding.
Fuck you.
Yeah. What are you talking about? Get out of my class.
You're wrong. Plus L plus ratio plus you're white.
Yeah. And then I give him an F.
Yeah. Plus F plus ratio.
I always ask for sources. That's what I do. And I always tell them to ask me for sources. So I'm always like, oh, cool. I don't even know what words I can say here, because sometimes I'll go on TikTok Live and can't say sources. But if a student might say
whatever
something,
you want.
All right, sounds
Except
good.
for like, slurs and shit.
Yeah,
but
just don't say the slur for white people. Then you'll be fine.
yeah.
Yeah, that one's TOS apparently. So
Someone got banned temporarily for it. Yeah.
A lot of someone's got banned for that one.
Good to know,
really?
good to know.
I only heard about Hassan.
Oh, well, yeah, there's quite a few people.
Oh, woof.
Wow. Well, if a student comes in and they're, start talking about, white genocide or something like that, I can always ask, oh, what are your sources on that? And have you really studied, neo-Malthusian theories versus the demographic transition model? Here's something that talks about overpopulation and why it's not necessarily as big of a, so it's always in a, Socratic method where you ask questions and you don't immediately shut students down, because if you immediately shut them down, then they're going to get defensive. Yeah, they get real defensive again. That's hurt them. Like, damn, this guy's really out to get me. Or he's fitting the stereotypes that all these people are saying. He's a liberal teacher coming at me. So it's asking a lot of questions and asking for sources. And then I say, oh, have you checked out this source that might, and then you let them grapple with it. And that's literally the entire point of education. You let students grapple with their cognitive dissonance. And once you help them navigate that, because anyone can look up facts and statistics, once you help students navigate that, then hopefully something beautiful is produced, like a critical thinking brain.
I mean,
So yeah, I do have students.
Do you talk about propaganda like in your history classes? Like, do you watch propaganda, like to see and talk about that? Like, how do you identify disinformation and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we analyze propaganda all the time. I mean, U.S. propaganda is absolutely fascinating, and it's not talked about as much. So every unit, we analyze the propaganda that was prominent there. I mean, just when I was teaching about the 1930s, I was showing them the Nazi rally in the Madison Square Garden. And what I do is show them a photo of this. I mean, it was like 20-something thousand people and it looks like Nazi Germany. And I show them a photo of this, and I say, where is this? And all of a sudden, they're like, Germany, this and that. One time, one student said Alabama, which I thought was hilarious. That's where his mind went to.
I've seen this pic. I know what you mean. Like I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Wow. I appreciate it.
That's
yeah,
crazy.
So I show them these images, and then we analyze and dissect them. Like, no, this is actually the United States. We watch the clip, then we talk about the use of George Washington and the American icons, these U.S. icons, to perpetuate fascism, this co-opting of symbols, which we see happening today. So
I want to take your history class.
Yeah,
I know, me too. Why didn't I have you for my history class in high school? Holy crap.
I'm just thinking about my 8th grade Louisiana history teacher with Confederate flag on the wall right now.
Oh my god.
What the?
Dude, what about Lincoln and Marx being pen pals? That's a good one. That's
yes, we read the letters back and forth,
Yeah, it's so cool.
Shut up. No, you do not.
We do, and they're always shocked with how Lincoln and politicians of those days, the way they write compared to the way they wrote compared to today. But yeah, we do. We analyze why Marx favored the Union over, the Confederacy, and so even though the Union was predominantly capitalist, so we have those conversations. One thing that I do in my class every day is I get students to critically analyze sources. So if we have a source, they have to, or information documents, they have to analyze the source, who wrote it, why did they write it, what was their intention, who is the targeted audience, and what was their desired outcome.
Chris, are you talking about primary sources here?
I am, yes.
That's fucking off.
Let's go.
That's fucking off.
I talk about that all the time.
I feel like that's really emphasized in science, because that's like your job is reading research papers and analyzing like why they did this experiment, how they did the experiment, what that means, like as conclusions go. But when it comes to like news or history or things like that, it's not as rigorous in its encouragement, I guess, of checking your sources and checking the intentions and stuff like that.
You're exactly right. It was not as rigorous. It was lecture based. It was sit down, be quiet, listen up. If not, you might be a communist. Like literally Cold War changed how people in the United States taught history. It was lecture based.
Yeah.
Kids had to sit there in rows, bells, things that dismissed. So with this inquiry based movement, that also led to a lot of backlash with these bills, because kids were coming home and they were questioning what they saw on the news. They were questioning information in ways that made a lot of people who believe in simple information uncomfortable. So I tell them not to just have the skills in my class, but also to take those skills out in the real world as well and beyond.
And I've noticed that, like, at like just getting really into science in my undergrad, like I noticed that I started analyzing things like that more often, and I was like, wow, why haven't I been doing this the whole time? That kind of thing. So that's really important that you're doing that for them, because they deserve to like look critically at information. We talked about on this panel, like there's not a lot of emphasis on critical thinking in like high school, middle school, stuff like that.
Right, exactly. It's lacking for sure.
How would you?
I don't know what you're all talking about. It sounds like a whole bunch of cultural Marxism to me.
That's right. That's right.
You know, when I was in high school, and this is very true, the biggest lesson I was taught was that we were all, if we weren't vigilant, we were going to become 20th century slaves at the hands of the Soviet Union.
Inshallah.
That's the biggest lesson that came out of my high school history teaching.
That's crazy. So, as a history teacher, maybe we can kind of bring this into like trying to, with your students, contextualize what's going on like within our current political sphere. Do you ever have to kind of grapple with, America's history and the current, social and political ills that were going on, and like media literacy with students? Like, what exactly is your experience with that?
The lesson that I do, we tie it back to today. So again, this week I taught gay liberation, Stonewall. I taught American Indian Movement, AIM, Chicano movement. So I taught a lot of how the civil rights movement expands out beyond just the civil rights movement in the South. And we always tie it back to today. Why is it still important for Indigenous people to continue fighting for their rights? Or what can we learn from the gay liberation movement today? So we always tie it back to what's going on in the present, and that does make for some really interesting conversations. The first thing I do as a teacher is have conversations or about how to have conversations. So again, when people talk negative about students, I'm always like, I don't know, I feel like students are so much more capable of having intellectual dialogue and honest and open conversation when we tell students to embrace discomfort and think that maybe think positive intent first and try to understand and grapple with it. So it seems like adults in many ways struggle a lot more. But yeah, to go back to your question, we always tie it back to what's going on today.
What's this feeling? Why is this hopium? Like, this feels weird. This feels strange.
Yeah, we can't leave this conversation happy. We never leave happy. What the fuck?
Yo, I have so much hope in our students, and these bills are absolutely terrifying, but the youth and as a whole in general, and polls show it, they are ready, they're active, and they are not falling for this bullshit propaganda that was students. Even thinking about how I learned history to how I teach it, and in general, it's a massive difference. I literally remember my history teacher saying things, and when I teach a lesson, I'm like, I'm not going to say these things and actively. Like, I remember teaching the Cuban Missile Crisis, learning about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and my teacher saying, the Soviet Union pulled their missiles out of Cuba because they were terrified of the United States and its capitalist power, and that the Khrushchev got scared and pulled them all out, and the United States had a victory. And that's what I believed until I got to like grad school, and I was like, wait, we had these secret negotiations. We pulled our missile out of Italy and Turkey, and they pulled it out. So and then now when I teach that, I show my students actual conversations between Khrushchev and JFK and what Fidel Castro was thinking. So
you're giving them a better history education than I had in college.
Oh wow!
Yep.
Thank you so much. All right, I got to come back on again, y'all. Y'all are kind.
It feels so strange. Like
Compliments.
it really is.
I'll be back.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
It's just bizarre, especially like because you're like you're in my stomping grounds. Like I complain a lot about the education that I grew up, even in like one of the best education districts in the state. Like that experience of like having to relearn or like go back and like get a proper contextualization of history after my education, like and to hear that you're actually doing the damn thing is awesome, and actually like does give me like a little ray of hope, at least for the kids in your classes.
I appreciate that, because it's, again, I feel like I can't leave teaching, or else I'm just going to go down this like deep end of pessimism or something like that, because after teaching I feel so reinvigorated, and I want to keep fighting and want to keep going. So I appreciate that, because Louisiana, we do have a lot of issues, and when we meet in person, when Ari comes down, we'll definitely chat about my school and environment and whatnot.
Hell yeah.
So here, I have one question. This actually comes from one of my chatters. Speaking of hope and teaching, they work as a librarian at a school. They want to get your suggestions, Chris, or maybe anybody else, for books they can buy for their library that are specifically LGBTQ themed.
Oh, my book, The Gaberhood.
Hey, link it in chat. Why not?
Wait, what did he say?
Yep. The
Oh, his
Gaberhood.
book. Oh,
Let's see. There's
You know,
I can-
academics always plug in their stuff, man.
hey, it's
Yes.
the only way we make money.
It's true.
I don't
definitely.
make money off of it.
definitely
touche.
that book. Oh, you don't make money off of that. So I would say I'm trying to look at I have a recommendations guide that I can totally send to this person. But I left my laptop at work, so I'm on a Chromebook that isn't connected to my.
Okay, you could just post it in the
My-
ministry chat, and then
Okay.
I can get it to him later.
Sounds good. Sounds good because there are a lot of books, even in terms of just gay liberation alone. And there's a book about trans activists during Stonewall, Marsha P. Johnson.
Well, I
Yeah.
hope that at least one thing that you teach about gay liberation is that drag queens are fierce.
Hell
true.
yeah.
And
they are.
fucking hilarious.
Oh yeah,
They are some of the funniest people I've ever watched.
Man, RuPaul's Drag Race is a great show too. Honestly, you can start like with like season 4 and keep watching. It's really interesting.
Yeah, start with season 4.
It is.
Don't start at the beginning.
Yeah,
it's
a really good.
First 3 seasons.
it's just it's kind of like a date. It kind of dated a little bit.
It's
like,
dated.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
okay.
it goes really. It starts really good. Like season 4, 5, 6 are really
And-
stellar.
From a female perspective,
Okay.
back in when they started that, they didn't have as wide of a range of foundation shades as they do now, which there's still a lot of work to do, but they didn't have as wide a foundation shade. So a lot of like the makeup and shade matching was really. Anyway,
Scary.
I mean, Paris is
I
burning.
know you
is
guys
another
really
All the dudes
care
are
about
like,
that,
uh-huh,
but
It's very good.
I show Paris.
hey, it's
is
got to do with
Burning.
Oh, you
race.
do? That's awesome.
You do. Wow.
That's
Yeah, and-
awesome.
Paris is Burning is awesome.
That's the one I got scared about, by the way. But I do show it, and I have it on the recommendations guide. But Paris is Burning it changed me and how I think about things as well when I first saw it. So that's an iconic, because it also talks about homelessness, people without homes and youth, which I think a lot of people in Louisiana, youth can relate to. So we have
Yeah.
a lot of kids in foster care, and once they turn 18, they're on their own, literally.
Shout out
So
to Baton Rouge Youth Group.
yeah, absolutely. So Paris is Burning is a great one. That's a great.
I used to have it on Laserdisc.
Oh wow.
That's amazing, dude. Those are so big. There's like, I used to have one
Yeah.
too. My dad is so big.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
We had a Laserdisc library when I was living in Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands. So you could go in, like a video store, like a Blockbuster or something, you can go and rent Laserdiscs.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
there was no charge. It was just kind of a library.
Chris, while you're looking up stuff on your computer, who is just Louisiana guy to Louisiana guy? Who's a figure within our history, our state's history, that really stands out to you?
There's many, but in terms of impact, we were just talking about Marsha P. Johnson, which I
Mhm.
think she's pretty amazing in what she did in Stonewall and threw the first bricks and whatnot. But people who stick out, I would say Huey Long would probably be one of the most
The Kingfish.
influential people.
Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. My mind's racing right now when you ask that question.
Yeah.
But I think of someone that impacted on the national scale and actually put his money where his mouth is and started redistributing wealth on a large scale. It's really impressive. And like a lot of people talk about progressives today, like AOC and what they would desire, Bernie and Green New Deal and whatnot. But Huey Long was that times 100.
Every
He
man a
was-
king.
Yeah, he was taxing the rich and getting textbooks in schools and building bridges and roads in poor neighborhoods.
When you tell people who grew up in Louisiana about Huey P. Long's policies, it blows their mind. They're like, "Wait, social welfare? What?
Yeah.
Universal basic income? What?"
I remember I had universal basic income. Every man a king. Everyone should have a salary and whatnot. I remember a professor asking what our thoughts were. I went to college in Texas, a really conservative university, and he said, what do the students from Louisiana think about Huey Long? And I was the only one that was like, oh, I grew up hearing nothing but amazing things. And then other kids in Louisiana were like, oh, he's the worst. He was a dictator and whatnot. Now, he was really, he didn't mess around. I mean, he would threaten the leader of the KKK and say he was going to like string him upside down and give him a taste of his own medicine. He would say shit like that. And and my professor said you can always tell someone from Louisiana's socioeconomic background by how they respond to Huey Long. Mm-hmm. Everyone from a working class background is like, yeah, I mean, he did this and that. And ultra super rich kids are like, well, he was kind of mean and not democratic. So I always find it fascinating, the polarization of Huey Long. But yeah, that would probably be one of the more influential people.
When we were doing a recruitment campaign for the Baton Rouge DSA, I was in charge of propaganda, so I was like making all the flyers and stuff. And Huey P. Long was the first thing I thought. I was like, we got to put him on there. We got to put his face big on there, his name, big bold letters. We got to get a super working class quote from him.
And people loved him. He would get like 90+% of the vote and he would simplify the tax code. We watch his speeches. He would say things like, if you're at a barbecue and someone comes in and they take, everything and just leave the rest leave scraps for everybody else, he would make that man come back and put it back on the table, and that the crowd would go wild and they could relate to things, like crawfish boils and whatnot. So yeah, absolutely fascinating for sure.
That's awesome. Good choice. Good taste.
Yeah. And I bet we have, knowing that you worked with DSA in Baton Rouge, we probably have some similar connections.
Oh,
we should chat about in person.
Yeah.
Very cool. Chris, how are you doing on time? How are you feeling?
I'm doing all right. I'm trying to log into my school email so I can pull up this recommendations guide. I left my laptop at work. We actually went on a field trip today. And so I left my laptop there. When I came back, I just went.
Are you talking about the recommendations list on your website?
Oh, no, this is for my students. So this would be something that would be something that I think that would go well with their specific question. So
got you.
Oh, here we go. Oh, it just popped up. So there's a Queer History of the United States by Michael Bronsky. That's really good. Black on Both Sides, A Racial History of Trans Identity by C. Riley Snorton. That's really good. Obviously, you need classics like The Feminine Mystique, which definitely ties into feminism and gay liberation. Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde. Yeah, there's quite a lot here that I think would go well with that person's question. So
Have you ever had a parent complain about that kind of content?
What's interesting is I taught in St. Bernard Parish, which is that's where David Duke won the majority of the people when he ran for governor and senator. And it was predominantly white. Demographics are changing a lot after Katrina because gentrification was pushing a lot of people out to St. Bernard Parish. And I taught in this conservative area, and I've never received one parent complaint ever in my entire teaching career about this history.
Yeah. I think a lot of these parent complaints are completely manufactured.
Yeah. And I think
I feel like if it was taught here, people would be getting angry emails, but maybe that's just my lack of hope in people.
No,
and I mean, that's assuming the students allow that part of their life to be open to their parents, like the curriculum, or that they tell their parents what they're learning, stuff like that. That's assuming
I think
open
it's super rare that parents are actually seeing what their kids are reading. People are so busy now. It's just hey, as long as the report cards are coming in and I see things higher than a C, you're good for the most part.
Yeah, I was raised in a very different environment from that. My mom always wanted to know what I learned in school, so that's why I said assuming open communication. It's surprising, but
I think two things with me is that one, I try to develop relationships with the communities that I serve, so no one's going to be like, oh, Chris is the liberal Marxist trying to brainwash my kids. It's like, no, that's the dude that like coaches soccer and, you know, goes to fundraisers, stuff like that. Like they see you out, right? And you talk to parents and you build this
You become
rapport.
a person.
Yeah, they like humanize you and whatnot.
Yeah.
And also, I think being a white dude helps out a lot in that regard, you know, so they might not think right away that I'm, you know, trying to. So I think there's a lot of white privilege associated with not getting as much pushback, because I've had friends who look very different than me that definitely have received some pushback. Sure.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, excellent point.
It's just very awkward sounds after that.
No, I was just reading Read and Rap's message in
Oh, no.
Marcus's chat. It might be because Chris is so solid and sharp that they're scared to challenge someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
True. And I mean, like,
That's
true.
stereotypically masculine, so.
Yeah, I think all of that plays in. My identity definitely plays a factor. I did have some teacher or parents that might ask about a text or a book in a very genuine way, and one parent I think felt a little uncomfortable but came at it very positive, and I put the plate back on her. I said, well, is there something that you think would be better for them to read that could get the point across that we want to get them across? And
Yeah, you're fucking
was,
sharp on that stuff. Oh.
well, we got to be prepared for, you know, pushback.
That's
But it
so
wasn't
good.
Yeah, well, it puts the onus on the parent. It's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
if you have an issue with my lesson planning, like,
Make,
tell me what
make
you
it-
think should be the substitute, and then I'll compare and contrast, and then we'll see where we can move from there. So that was one time, and it was just someone I was like, this text, why this one? What, you know? And that was it. But it wasn't even a complaint. It was just a parent on parent night that just had a question.
God forbid they start complaining about like Ibram X. Kendi and stuff like that.
Yeah, we
Then-
read a
then
few
you know.
chapters from him. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, we read the chapter called Origins of Racist Ideas, and then they read one about the Enlightenment. And also, we criticize him. So everyone we read, we criticize. So my students go off on Kendi sometimes. They might
Good.
they'll say Howard Zinn is outdated. You know, like they'll go off on people that the CRT people are like, you know, oh, they're reading so and so and so and so, and I'm like, yeah, and they're also really critically analyzing them and coming at these people as well for their ideas. So everyone that we read is fair game to come at.
Good. God damn. The hopium is real.
Yeah, I know. It's wild that I do feel so much hope, y'all. So I think teaching is definitely where I get my hope and inspiration.
So I guess how do you like galvanize other teachers to do what you do? Because I could see other people sort of being scared, and you know, rightfully so. Like I could understand that perspective, but you know, I think what you're doing to push back against this is a pretty good strategy in a lot of respects. But I feel like some colleagues might be more hesitant than you are, and less sort of open to embrace a lot of these ideas and to just be very, you know, out about, wear on your chest, you know, type of approach. What would you say to like a hesitant colleague that like agrees with you but is scared to actually like teach the material?
Like you did, I would definitely affirm their feelings and validate them. That's real. These bills are scary. I'm nervous sometimes. I'm like, you know, is the guy who wanted to pass a CRT bill in Louisiana, which we defeated in Louisiana, one of the only southern states where an anti-CRT bill wasn't passed, and it was due to teacher activism. He was talking about setting up this McCarthyist-style panel where teachers would have to go in front and talk about why they received a complaint. I'm like, what? That'd be the day where I show up to a panel and they're, you know. So I think the fears are real. But at the end of the day, you know, if someone is feeling like they should get involved in education, if they have that intrinsic desire to, you know, help the youth and give back to communities, I would still encourage them to go and talk about how to navigate it, and also encourage people to have mentors as well. And then to join the struggle, join the fight, because usually people don't get into teaching to be activists. That's why they went into teaching, right? But in many ways, teaching does create activists because we see what's going on. We see the real impact that this bill is having on trans students and how they make people feel. So I would still encourage them and just ensure that they have a mentor to navigate all of this with. Because I'm fortunate to I had a mentor when I first started teaching, and I'm fortunate to help to mentor new teachers now.
This is irrelevant, but did I just find a picture with you and Joe Brandon on your Twitter?
You talking about me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I met the. You're talking about Joe Biden, Joe Biden? Yeah.
Yeah. Joe Brandon.
Wow.
That's hilarious. At first, I was like, "Is he saying that?" That's
Yes,
hilarious.
he's doing the thing.
You'll get more of that when we hang out, but my brain is totally melted by being on this platform.
No, that's hilarious. I thought that's what you meant, and I'm like, wait, is there an actual Joe Brandon? Or
I thought he was talking about an actual Joe Brandon.
No.
So they bring up political people I haven't heard of sometimes, and I'm just like,
yeah, I'm like,
I thought that was just another one of those.
I was like, he's either talking about the president or some like historian that I don't know that I might have met somehow or something. I'm like, damn, this is embarrassing. I'm
I'm talking about Brandon, brother.
Yeah, I did go to the White House and have a conversation with Biden, which was really interesting.
Wow.
And Jill Biden as well. I did an
Can you
interview.
tell you
with
where
her.
they hide the adrenochrome?
You did. I can't tell.
Sick.
Nah, that's
Yeah,
funny.
Grimlow, I was gonna say he turns into Joe Brandon when he takes the adrenochrome.
Ah,
The transformation.
Yeah.
It's like Popeye.
It's like Dr.
Yeah.
Jack or Popeye. I'll punch you right in the jaw, Jack.
Don't you like corn pop?
What did you guys talk about? That's really interesting.
So
Confidential.
yeah, CIA stuff.
Yeah,
What
the adrenochrome.
Yeah.
QAnon and no, I'm just kidding. So a lot of times people love to give teachers awards, which is great, and we'll take them and whatnot. And then they want to invite us and do a lot of photo ops, which is great. We'll do it. But the real conversations, when it starts to come time to like actually have these conversations, I think a lot of people are uncomfortable. They're like, no, we just want to be like, we support teachers. So with Jill Biden, who is an educator herself, we talked a lot about teacher retention and how to support teachers during COVID and what teachers actually need.
Mhm.
And that's on CBS. So it's, Gail King had like a roundtable with 4 teachers and Jill Biden. And it was like an hour and a half long discussion, and they cut it down to 7 minutes, which is really frustrating because
Fuck.
I know.
I hate journalists. Fuck.
Yeah, we talked and we said really important things, and we talked about unions but all that was cut.
Damn, dude, that really
Go
shows
Go
that like
figure.
the long form like discussions like this. It should be uploaded to YouTube. Like, damn.
I agree with that. Biden, the president, Joe Biden and I, the conversation was much more brief. And this was after Hurricane Ida. And he said that he was going to release FEMA funds for everyone, and he didn't do it. And so I challenged him on that because that was like an immediate.
Surprise.
Right.
Did you challenge him to cancel your student loans?
No, I did not. But interestingly enough, they also
missed opportunity.
Yeah, they duped teachers with that. They said if you teach in a Title I school for 10 years, Obama had this plan where all your loans would be forgiven.
Mhm.
And so a lot of people did it, like myself included. We taught in these high poverty schools. And then our
Surprise!
yeah,
no
only
loan
like-
forgiveness.
only like 1% of people who applied for this were actually got it. So this teacher forgiveness. So yeah, there was a lot to talk about with Biden, but that was definitely on my mind because I was like, well, sir, you told everyone to apply for FEMA funds and there would be no questions asked, but my family and a lot of people were denied. So, and then we talked a little education, but it was very, very brief with the actual president. It was more photo op-y, for sure.
It's crazy. Oh my god. This is why I can't get into like larger politics because I would just make it.
Well, you
Yeah,
do the
that kinda
difference,
shit.
man. I mean, you could do whatever you wanted, And I just want to say that there's a lot of people that work at city hall and state governments that aren't the actual legislative people that are actually elected too. So it takes a lot of people. So
Yeah.
if anyone's interested in this stuff, I mean, get involved. And there's a lot of different levels too. You can be a lawyer for these people. You could get involved politically. There's a lot of different ways.
That's
I mean,
really
yeah, I
cool,
always
though.
tell my students to even if you don't get involved in education, keep education on your mind. I mean, we can all look back to teachers who inspired and influenced and got us to where we are. So even if you go into law or politics,
Mm-hmm.
always remember education.
Yeah, and tell the stories of the teachers that impact you. We talk a lot on the philosophy of science, about stories.
Sorry.
Trying to tell, and education is such an interesting way of learning through stories.
Yeah, well, my solution would be for philosophy to be part of education from kindergarten onwards. So,
also shout out local libraries if you can donate to your library. That helps.
Yeah. Pro tip, folks: if you have a library card, you can get audiobooks.
All right. Yeah. Again,
right,
Chris, feel free.
Thanks for that,
anytime.
Gremla. That was.
Well, no, I mean it's a solid point. Library cards I think are pretty cheap, and you get access to a whole lot of shit with them. Public libraries are a very valuable tool insofar as people who are not rich by any stretch, getting access to material, and they can at least get a computer, go online. Wait, aren't they? Yeah, are they free? I don't know.
My library is free.
I think library cards are $3, and then just a registration thing, and after that, the usage of the library is completely free.
Yeah, I know there's a one-time very cheap because at least when I've always gotten a library card, it's always been $5, and then that's it forever. Pretty affordable, I would say.
Yeah, I remember getting them free as a kid. I haven't had a library card in forever. And when I say forever, that's a long time.
I think the last time I went to a library, there was they bought a bunch of manga because they wanted to get kids interested in going to the library. So they had a mini anime convention, and I brought my little sister there. It was very weird.
We go all the time.
Sound a little...
Yeah, we go weird. Probably twice a week too, because I have little kids, and there's lots of family events at the local library. So free things where everyone comes together. We'll sing songs together. We'll read a book together. It's playtime for the kids. They have cool toys. You can actually rent toys from the library. So if you don't have the means to buy some of these cool Lego sets or whatever like that, you can actually rent them. There's video podcasting, audio setups, 3D printers, so many awesome things at the local library.
Yeah, my parents don't do streaming. Sorry, what was that?
I said, what about Drag Queen Story Hour?
Yeah, that's also another thing.
My parents don't do streaming. They can't figure it out, but they go to the library and they get DVDs, and they love getting whole seasons of shows and whatnot. And I didn't even know libraries did that, but they're a year or two behind. But they manage it. They save all this money by not getting Netflix, Hulu, and HBO and whatnot.
Free Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly.
So, Chris, every time we have a guest on here, we have to ask them one shit post of a question from a certain power chatter.
Oh no!
This one is of a different variety, so it's not the usual question, you guys.
Okay.
Reen Rap wants to know, Chris, when are you going to marry Ari?
Oh, that's really funny. And that's actually why I'm here. She was like, you need to talk to Marcus. And then I watched y'all stream, and I was like, oh, this guy's, he's great. I'm in.
Tell me when it's over
because I never...
That's why he's not marrying Ari, because he saw your stream, Marcus.
No, I'm getting there. We've joked about it. We've joked about it.
Bisexual king incoming?
I don't know. We'll see. It seems like that's the rate that's going. We'll see. But that's hilarious. That's a question. Ari is absolutely amazing, and she's coming to visit. We're gonna hang out with Gremlo and kick it.
Right.
But someone really wants to know about that.
God, Jesus Christ!
Where'd you go, Greg?
Tell me when it's over. Tell me when I can't.
I know it's cringe.
This is the parasocial nature of Twitch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotta get used to it, bud.
Oh god.
Damn. What an hilarious question. I was not expecting it. I was like, are they gonna ask me about an embarrassing story as a teacher?
Normally it's about
am I
milk.
naive? Or I don't know. That's funny.
Normally it's about cougars and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. I'll say this.
You got the easy one.
Yeah, any guy would be lucky to marry Ari. So boom.
Oh.
Yeah.
Smart man.
Saturday is my 10-year anniversary with my wife, and dude, it's a journey.
Hey, happy early anniversary.
Yeah, really.
Wait, you've been married 10 years?
Together 10 years. We only got married a year ago.
I was like, are you... Okay, so you guys must have started dating young, right?
I was 19 when we started dating.
Okay. You don't look that old. I was confused.
No, I have a baby face. I'm 30, so I don't look as old as I am.
He's
told.
30 going on 86.
Yeah.
Brother.
Hilarious.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions to round out our discussion? Anything burning a hole in someone's brain?
I'm
I
good.
just wanted to make a comment. I love talking to other educators, and I always take something from you guys and add it into what I do. So thanks so much for that.
I wanted to ask, what do you think of private schools? We were talking about private schools a lot in chat, and I'm just curious, like, what are your opinions?
I think the history of private schools is incredibly problematic, and we saw the rise of private schools at any time integration started to become an issue, whether it's during Reconstruction or after the Civil Rights. And I do think one of the reasons why the United States lags behind in terms of funding is because their existence. But at the end of the day, I don't know if I'm all like abolish private schools, but I do think there needs to be some sort of limit on this divestment of public education, because a society is not going to be able to continually function if we don't have public education that's actually funded. And so something has to change with private schools.
Yeah.
I've gone to a private university but that's only because I played soccer and I was fortunate to go there. So I don't really have much experience in private schools going there or.
I was just wondering if you had like an opinion of them as a teacher. Just.
I'm not the.
We've been talking about them a lot, so I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of private schools for sure.
I know their curriculums are a lot less regulated, right?
Yeah, they could kind of do whatever they want, teach whatever they want, and they might have to have similar, standardized testing, but the way they can go about it, they have a lot more freedom and leeway in terms of curriculum, which is a problem, right? When Catholic schools are teaching.
There's a chain of charter schools here that I think they're nationwide. I don't know. They advertise like one nation under God, and like the American like hell yeah brother sentiment all over their billboards everywhere, and it's just oh boy, I'd love to send my kid there.
And some might offer good services, not those kind of schools, but yeah, most of them are bastions of religious propaganda, for lack of better words.
Yeah, and it's like as wealth and income disparities widen and widen, we just see less and less funding going into education, and the kids of rich people getting the best kind of education they can get, despite them all being morons.
Well, especially when you consider like the endowments, like Harvard University has $53 billion right now. It's just unbelievable the amount of money that they have. You just got to tax. We have to tax these endowments that these universities have had. It's just not. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and half the time, private schools aren't producing, in many ways, critical thinkers in terms of like actually pushing back and challenging systems, but more so teaching kids how to take tests and how to manage the system and whatnot. And that's why they tend to get ahead. They have the resources, the tutors, the means to get to school, the babysitters, and the tiny class sizes.
A lot of it's resume building too.
Buildings built with racism and slavery. It's crazy, man.
A pretty good answer, though. I understand that someone who's currently working in education can't be like super like, yeah, we need to like
abolish private schools.
Yeah, abolish private schools. Can't necessarily come out and just like say that.
We'll say it for you. I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
Go for it. I
Finish
appreciate that,
model now.
Chris. I never know who's watching.
Please.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am limited, but I would say not limited a lot. But I would feel like, if I called for full-fledged revolution, people would be like, wait a second.
He is
I
doing
knew
this
he was
on
doing
Marxism. Here it is.
Exactly.
I knew it. He's on that same platform as that Hassan Abi.
Oh, Jesus Christ. All right. Panel, let's go ahead and give poor Chris some of his time back. Chris, dude, thank you so much. This was awesome. You spending a little over 2 hours with us here tonight to talk about what's going on with respect to all of these bills and education and, I guess, life, the universe, and a little bit of everything. We'll usually take this opportunity to allow you to shout out either your socials, your anything, a particular cause, group, organization. So have the floor and shout out what you want to shout out, Chris.
Well, definitely, thanks so much for having me, because what an opportunity to speak on this legislation and talk to your audience and try to get people more involved and aware. So it was lovely to meet y'all. Sure, people can add me on Twitter at Chris Dier, Dier. My TikTok is at CMDLA, and that is a TikTok where I make history videos, 1 minute little history shorts about marginalized history. And it's catered to my students, but it's kind of now everyone, it goes other places. And I've also been convinced to start Twitch streaming. So I did make a Twitch account recently.
Welcome.
That is, thank
Welcome to
you,
the
thank
swamp.
you.
It's chaotic but lovely most of the time.
Yeah, it seems like there's a market on here. It's for people who want to chat about history and education. So, and teachers are starting to pour into it a bit. So, might as well join it. And that is Chris Dier History. So, just my name and history. That's my Twitch name. So, those are the top 3. And that librarian, if they want to tweet me or write me or get in touch with me, I'm more than happy to send all of my recommendations. Also, I do have a book called The 1868 St. Bernard Parish Massacre. It's about an event that happened during the Reconstruction era. So if any of your viewers are interested in history, feel free to check out that book. They can also reach out to me, and I'll happily mail a copy with a nice little inscription as well. So
Beautiful.
That's it for me.
Well,
Other
thanks for
than
coming
that,
on, dude. And congratulations on the 2020 award, Teacher of Louisiana, right? I mean, that's just incredible. So obviously well deserved. So congrats, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you all so much for having me.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, take care, stay safe, and we'll
All right.
certainly be in contact.
Bye.
All right. Take care, y'all.
Bye, Chris. Thanks.
All right.
Oh, I'm like overdosing on hopium, man.
I know.
Whoa.
It feels weird.
Damn,
so
it's not usually how we
strange.
go, right? It's an interesting feeling.
Yeah. What is this inside me? I feel like singing the songs from Hamilton.
Lib, Monka Lib, Arrow
Lib.
Point, Monka Lib.
No, though, like that someone like in my stomping grounds is like actually doing like good work within education, like not just like giving proper context of history, but like teaching kids how to like properly contextualize like what's currently going on. That's so needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I said he does a better job teaching history than the professors I had, for sure.
Ooh, I just got an interesting question from my chat for the post talk. For the panel, what transhuman modification would you undergo in a cyberpunk future? What cybernetic
Does
modifications?
genetic modification count, or is it like
Sure.
cybernetic only?
Sure. If it's like nanobots, then sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's say that. I want freckles. God damn it. That's it.
What?
That's all I want. I want
the best you
fucking
got?
freckles.
Okay, I've been thinking
Yeah.
about this for a long time. Okay, let's
Oh my
stop,
God.
Stop. Okay, what I want is our spine is far too vulnerable on the outside of our bodies. So I want like a shield, kind of like an exoskeleton that kind of like curves down and articulates as I move. So then it can kind of like help me move around, kind of like an exoskeleton. And then you could like put like cool modifications in there, put You know,
Like
whatever
extra
you want.
arms.
Arms maybe, but I was thinking more of like, yeah, you could have the health benefits, you know, tied to apps or whatever like that. You could have it all built into that. It'd be sweet, man. It'd be sweet. GPS. It's like see where people are, give your location to people if you need it. It'd be sweet.
Oh, you went straight Elon Musk with
Men.
that. Okay.
No, that's
Fucking
a
men.
brain link kind of like bullshit that he has. That's
Interesting. Interesting. I've always wanted a prehensile tail.
Oh
That'd be
yes,
cool.
a tail would be
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah, so
That's
maybe
very
like in the
like you,
same
too.
vein of like the spinal like modification, like it like has an extension into a
Gremlo's
tail.
a furry confirmed.
I mean, that was in high school, but yeah. Like in high school, I was in the furry crowd. Yeah,
Hell yeah.
I had a fursona.
And
Did you
what was
really?
your
That's
surprise?
awesome. What was it?
Uh,
If you don't mind, like that's kind of private.
I bounced between. I really like red pandas, but I also had like a cat thing.
Okay,
It
so
was,
I
like,
did an entire report in my evolution class on red pandas and giant pandas. Do you know what the red pandas' closest living relatives are?
Raccoons.
Raccoons and coatis and kinkajous and like all these weird like niche animals that no one knows about. They're only called pandas because they have the opposable thumbs and eat bamboo, and giant pandas were renamed after red pandas were named and discovered.
Did you watch Turning Red?
No, I haven't watched it.
You're gonna love it.
I've heard it's really good. I'm not a big movie person.
Oh, well.
Yeah. I know I'm the worst. My husband reminds me that I need to watch more movies, but you know.
It's really good. All right, Dr. Buenabuen, what's your cybernetic mod in the cyberpunk dystopia that Elon Musk will bring us?
I think it's going to have to be augmenting with chlorophyll and just being able to absorb whatever nutrients I need from sunlight and convert everything I need to run my body and my mind, and maybe even have like a little THC capsule or something in there.
So, Dr.
Yeah,
Buenabuen, there are slugs
Yeah.
that actually do this. So they'll eat chloroplasts. So you need chlorophyll are kind of like the like the sun panels and the solar panels, but you need the circuitry and all that kind of stuff. So you need the chloroplast. So you need the full chloroplast. But
okay, well, you know better than I do.
yeah, and but it's cool. But they actually photosynthesize. They're living. I'll put it in chat, but it's really cool. They're sea slugs that are green like a leaf, but then they're they get benefits from it. It's pretty cool.
Would that
Yeah, because
basically be like
can you imagine?
would that basically
can you
be the
imagine?
fountain of youth for you though? Like would
Well,
you
I
be
mean,
able
it
to
would
like
free you
live for
from
like
having
really,
to-
No,
really
because
long time?
your chromosomes will still shorten. Your telomeres will still shorten. You'll be more at risk for, genetic mutations and death. But I
But you
mean,
wouldn't have to worry about
wouldn't have to eat.
buying food, right? So you wouldn't have to worry about having a job,
Ooh.
and
There's-
you could devote your time to a lot of other things.
There's another species of slugs that live near deep sea vents that don't even eat food. They just like consume bacteria until they reach adulthood, and then the bacteria like metabolize the gases that come out of these deep sea vents and then just sustain the slug. They'd never have to eat once they hit adulthood. Really weird. So it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
I have like
So-
87 animal facts on my stream, and that's one of them. So. Not
Just
even
get
kidding.
Nightbot to have a,
That's what I
a
did.
Google search. Oh, you do? Okay,
Oh, I
never
have.
mind.
So I have a quotes function, and instead of quotes, it's animal facts. So you just do like exclamation point quote or animal fact, and it'll just
That's cool.
spit one out.
Dr. Buenabuen, I
Professor
put it in
Q.
your play this on stream in your Discord. So if you want to watch it,
All right,
it's
thank
pretty
you.
cool. Yeah.
I'll take a look at it.
Professor Q. What about you?
Oh man, I just thought of a really clever one. Right, real life gaydar would be nice. And when the question
It
was
tracks
first
the gay
asked,
gene.
when the question was first asked, my mind went to Cyberpunk the game, and I was like, "Oh, I want the whip thing." I don't know, something that would like really allow me to multitask because I have so many ideas that I want to push out, and It's just a matter of not having the bandwidth on my brain to do it.
Like a hard light projector that you can kind of do like a shadow clone to help you multitask.
Yeah.
Like a Dr. Manhattan.
Ooh.
Yeah, Dr. Manhattan, yes.
Interesting. Marcus, would you want a modification that allows you to breathe in COVID particulates and be able to dispose of them?
I mean, the rate I'm fucking going. Yeah, immunity to all respiratory disease. That might be a pretty good one.
Yeah.
No, I've actually thought about this a decent amount. I guess in a not.
Why have you guys all
pandemic
thought
world.
of this? And I'm
It's
just
what
like, I
dudes
want
do.
freckles.
See?
This
Well,
is what
really
dudes
like
do.
the stereotypical women v men like panel right here. Like, I want
there's
freckles.
nothing
I want
wrong
a
with
fucking
it.
spine armor plate.
That's right.
Dude,
Well,
there's
there was actually
funny.
a post I saw a while back. It's like every dude has had that daydream when they were in school of like, what if there's an active shooter? How will I John Wick?
Oh no,
my way
I've
out of
had
this?
that, but that's yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it kind of plays into that conversation though. Like we've all, at least dudes, tend to have a lot of the like power fantasy style
Mhm.
daydreams
Yeah.
in that respect. So that's why like our first conception of the answer to this question is like, yeah, superpowers. I want to fight and punch and do man shit. Like it's almost
I
like a
wanna be
weird
Donald
toxic
Trump.
masculinity offshoot.
Yeah.
So there's actually some
But,
research going on right now about like kind of implanting like nanotechnology, like lattices, so you can actually like sense things that are going on, and you can like install in mammals into their brains like these like a nanotechnology sheet of carbon and sense them doing different stuff and change behaviors and stuff like that. So it's an interesting way of interfacing this idea is to kind of like the idea is to make it so that you're not connected like directly through wires, and you can actually, it's called like off-site monitoring, so you could actually see what's going on through just kind of like special cameras and stuff like that.
In a totally not big brain thing like that, someone in chat just said, I just want a fusion furnace in my gut so I don't have to shit again.
Yeah, no, where I was going with that is I really want the ability to never need to sleep, because that
Oh my
would
God.
give me so much time to do shit.
My
Not
intro-
sleeping
sleep.
and ideally super strength. Those would be my two.
My intro biotech class, she was like, design your wildest experiment. And I'm like, I would take whatever genes it is that elephants have and like a bunch of other animals have where they sleep in like 30 minute like intervals and just like 30 minutes and go about their day and then 30 more minutes. That's what I'd fucking do.
That was me when I worked in psych.
Not sleeping.
I would just like kind of doze off for like 10 minutes at a time, and like that was my sleep schedule.
Yeah, I mean that's your brain forcing you to go to sleep type of sleep, not a like I want to do this. You're
it
going
wasn't
to do
healthy,
this or
for
you
sure.
die.
Yeah, certainly not healthy.
Brutal.
That was a really good episode, though. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, a shout out again to Ari for making that happen with Chris.
Yeah, we didn't
bring
just
Ari
get
on.
a educator. We got a freaking superstar educator. I mean,
Who met
he's
the
a rock
president.
Yeah, he's inside the halls of the deep state.
He's one of the leaders of the postmodern neo-Marxist brother. We found him.
That's right.
Oh god, Gremlin, I know you did this on stream, I think on your stream. I don't know how you feel about like doing this again for like a future Ministry of Science, but those 42 rules, I'm almost kind of interested in like doing a deeper dive into just
Oh yes,
all 42 of those.
I would love for the panel for us to go through all 42 of them. That would be incredible, and we break down, because the crazy thing about these self-help things is all of them are kind of just like vague posting, but if you
Yeah.
know like the mythos of Jordan Peterson, and we're able to kind of like gaze into like his mind's eye for a
We
moment.
just have a Jordan Peterson panel.
Yeah.
God.
Dunking on Jordan Peterson for 3 hours, please.
Yeah, we can do it.
I would relish
We still
that.
need to do the like the non-official Ministry of Science episode where we're just improving IDW characters. Or
Oh yes, that's right. I totally
yeah.
forgot about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
by the
Like-
way, shout out to Echoplex Media who does a show
Yes.
on this. What is it? Tuesdays or no
It's
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays. Intellectual Dollar Tree every
Yes,
Wednesday,
yes,
baby.
yes, yes.
Intellectual
Nice.
Dollar Tree.
I like that.
Yeah. Oh, and he apparently does a decent Sam Harris impression, so we may be able to
Yes.
lump Dave into it too. Because I got Brett
Ooh.
Weinstein, you got Lobster Daddy, Sam Harris. I think Alec does a good Alex Jones, if I remember.
Alex does a decent Alex Jones.
I gotta work on my God, what's her name? Candace Owens, I guess. I don't know. Do they have female like?
Female
Yeah.
IDW?
Heather.
Yeah.
Heather.
Oh, yeah, Heather
Brett's wife.
Haying.
I'm not deep
Lauren
enough in the
Shen?
sauce. to
Lauren
know.
Chen's another one.
I've never heard these names.
Oh, okay.
If you want to find a more niche one, Catherine Page Harden. She's a race realist who keeps publishing books about
Oh,
how
jeez.
the poor are genetically inferior and shit.
Oh god. Oh god.
I don't know if I want to watch them enough to like learn how to do their voice. I've been watching. I watched an entire season of The Nanny in the last like week just to figure out how to do a New York accent like she does. But I don't know if I could like commit to
Madonna?
that.
You know, it's
Maybe.
interesting. You guys are the
So
only
much
people.
Fran Fine.
So I talk about the IDW or ask people like at conferences, academic conferences, and they have no clue what the fuck I'm talking about.
That's
like it's
awesome.
yeah. I mean, it's just amazing because outside of like Twitch, anyway, I
Well,
digress.
the IDW is pop culture stuff.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with academics.
Yeah.
You know, it is,
It's spectacle.
Yeah. It's basically what it is.
Oh, Amber, I forgot to mention this. This is irrelevant from the conversation other than mentioning Donna. I was going to tell you, like, with the original names you recommended, you needed to put a Lynn in it if you wanted to do, like, New England type girl. Like Tammy
Ooh,
Lynn,
yeah.
Randy Lynn, or, like, for Donna, it would be, like, Donna May.
It looked
got
like
that
the
from
vote was
Ted.
going for Denise.
Ooh.
So I think we're doing Denise. I don't know if Lynn would work with Denise. Denise Lynn.
Denise Lynn
I
works,
don't
yeah.
know.
Denise Lynn would
Eh.
work, yeah.
Yeah,
Lynn works with
anyway.
everything.
So I want to
Around here.
spitball this idea with you guys before we all kind of part ways for the night. I'm thinking about putting on my own show on Saturday nights, and I want to. This is my idea to like slowly show people how like a lot of these like debate bro dipshits on this platform don't know what they're talking about, and do a "Are you smarter than a fifth grader" type thing.
Oh my
Where
god!
I bring on like
love it.
5 people. I just have like very basic civics questions that get harder and harder as they go on through the show, and see exactly how much these people know. What do we think about that?
I don't know.
Yeah, I
if
think
I'd know
Prim
that.
and I were kind of talking about something similar, and I think in the ministry Discord before when we were trying to think about the re-education camp type segments that actually like that plays into it pretty well. I don't know
Yeah.
what you want to do in terms of branding and whatnot, but I like the premise. I really like the premise because I think what you're going for is to show how shallow like Twitch politics people really are in terms of what they actually know.
For names, we had one of them was civic duty, but like duty as in like poopy duty.
Duties and poopy.
Yeah. One of the other ones was Grim knows best, and another one was counterproductive, which I really like.
I feel like I've heard counterproductive before.
Okay.
Like
well,
as a I might just be hallucinating.
maybe I don't know.
I feel
Didn't
like
get
it's
whole
like
lot
a
of response on that
podcast
one,
or
though.
something that I've heard. Anyway.
Maybe I don't know. I think it's an interesting idea to like.
I like it because you're using the spectacle
Mhm.
to
Your
a
advantage.
good way, in a good way, like
Yeah.
a disruptive, like
Yeah, it's
smack
okay.
the shit
Like,
out
if
of
you
you.
can't answer the question, I mean, like, just open up with like, all right, first question. This person won the 2020 presidential election.
Donald J. Trump.
Yeah,
Got him. Got him.
yeah. It was Hillary Clinton that actually won. But yeah, I think I'm gonna try and put that together and maybe do like a trial run in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's not a bad thought. I think something else that came into my mind too. I don't know if you've seen what it's Will Neff and Austin show, whatever
Name
like
Your
little game
Price.
show type thing they do.
Yeah.
That would be good to like literally embrace the full game show aesthetic. Like
Mhm.
if you need one of the like, you know, disembodied voices for like the announcer, like, "Hey, welcome to whatever," and then you got like the Wheel of Fortune-esque sound effects and shit. Like,
oh yeah, I'm gonna get all the production stuff together and try and like get a few people to, in good faith, do it. Maybe not get a whole bunch of the big characters within this space on, and to see if I can get like a couple of my the people in the space that I'm familiar with to do it for me. See how it goes.
yeah,
I
get a
can't
dry
do
run.
voices, but I can do the announcer behind my Marvin avatar.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
I like this. I like this a lot.
Yeah, there's like a character. There's like a mascot to it. Okay. We'll talk shop.
Yeah, set up a Discord group and we can talk shop.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, folks. I got to go promo the charity stream on someone else's channel real quick. Just for everybody who's live right now. On the 16th, I'm doing a 24-hour charity stream for Innocence Project. If you guys want to stop by, Amber, I'm getting prop night. If you want to play prop night during that.
Oh, I already told you yes. I'm gonna be
prop
there.
night.
I'm planning on it.
Did I add you to the group call?
No,
No. Okay. Well, I'll do that
but I
momentarily.
will be there.
Hell yeah.
I'm so excited.
I don't think you're friends with me on Discord.
Nope. I never friend people on Discord. It's really weird. Like I message people, but then like never friend them. I have like 4 Discord friends, but I message like 30 people. It's really weird.
Alrighty. Well, that's
Yeah.
it for me, folks.
Yeah, I guess we can go around the horn and do shout outs. I think you got yours and Gremlin. Anything else you want to add to it?
No, that's really it. I have a panel on masculinity on Sunday. A debate with some more groypers on modern slave labor and stuff like that on Tuesday, and the charity stream next Saturday.
Sounds good.
Twitch.tv/Gremlo.
Oh yeah, I think let me take a look at my webcam. Okay, so I think Dr. Bunabun's always first. I think Discord puts it in alphabetical order. So go ahead.
Dr. Bunabun, you can find me here on Twitch at Dr. Bunabun, and I stream Tuesday through Friday mornings, 6 to 10 a.m. ish. We talk a lot about philosophy and ethics, and then we host the Philosophy Science podcast on Sunday evening, 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Our last session, unless Greg comes up with another session, is going to be on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it would be cool to talk like because we're reading about revolutionaries, we're reading about people thinking of and talking about science, but like, what if we're those thinkers? You know what I mean? Like, what if we can think about that stuff and pontificate and how would we change things and change science? And I think it'd be like an interesting wrap
for the
up.
revolution.
Yeah,
It's time for the revolution, brother.
yeah, something like that. I don't know. That's just
I
my
hear you.
idea. I put
So
some.
I'm down with that.
Okay, I put some questions in chat and stuff. Marcus just answered them all and said yes. So that was thanks, Marcus. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I mean, like I was agreeing with you in a lot of respects. I think I wasn't like,
but then we had a good
you're
conversation in Discord, and I'm like, why don't we just talk about this on stream? Why are we talking about this on Discord private channel?
I got excited. Okay, let me have this.
All right, sounds good.
Anyways, Amber, go ahead.
I am DN Amber. The DN is for D's nuts. No, I'm just kidding.
Damn.
I usually I usually do gaming content and sprinkle in some science to make it more approachable. But then I'm here with these yahoos every Thursday and have a great time. So. And I'll be on Gremlo's charity stream Saturday, not tomorrow. I keep thinking today's Friday.
Not this Saturday, the 16th. Next Saturday.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm off. My schedule's fucked because I took Friday off last week and left work early for the appointment, and I'm just all fucked now. Anyway.
So
Right on.
I'm Professor Q, and you can't find me anywhere but here, just like it. I am working on another paper on QAnon that's about finished. I cannot wait. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, we love having you around, Professor Q, as always. Dave was also wanting to hop on the ministry, so that might be something to talk about too for a future episode to set that up. So just letting you know that ahead of time, Professor Q.
Need to get
Greg,
Ari on too.
Oh yeah. We got to have an episode with Ari. Greg, go ahead.
Well, I have a YouTube channel called The Peer Review. You can get there. The URL is just thepeer.review. I have a video that is that I just uploaded about nuclear power, my thoughts on that, and I've kind of suspended my live stream on Wednesdays just because like I'm gotta get this manuscript out, like it's on. So that's I've been just focused on that. So
Are you on the publishing grind? That sucks, dude.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
dude, it's so close. It's 25 pages long, and I still have like 4 more experiments to go, dude. It's like 12 figures with supplementals. It's like, how is this not
Dude,
done
you could
yet?
split that in half probably and publish 2. Good lord.
Don't remind me. Don't remind me.
I do want to watch your nuclear power video.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's a basically it's like this Slate article. This guy's talking about what the future is going to look like if we don't invest in nuclear energy. So I think there's positive and negatives to nuclear power, to be honest with you. And I think I try to talk about both of, try to talk about it in a good light, an even keel.
Yeah. If people have heard me rant, they know that I'm absolutely adamantly opposed to any nuclear power, any nuclear energy generation, any nuclear refinement, etc.
Yeah.
It's poison, and we don't need it, and we need to clean up what we polluted.
Yeah. I mean, it's not renewable energy at the end of the day. So if we're looking for renewable energy, then it's just not renewable. So anyway.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll go ahead and round it out. I think most folks know who I am, twitch.tv/homozygote. Currently trying not to get COVID, so here I am, masked up. After this, I will be donning my COVID battle gear and a brave trip to the bathroom so I can pee for like the first time in 5 hours, and that is a frightening thought, but I have to do it. Might fish a jar out of the recycling so I can use that as a piss jug until my roommate's testing negative. I don't know. Anyways, stream every Tuesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Ironically, going over COVID content while I deal with what's across the hallway. So, yes, I'm going to be asserting dominance over the virus momentarily by going out and trying to use my damn bathroom. But all right, on that note,
go get him, Marcus. Go get him.
Yeah, man.
I need to hype myself up to leave my room. That's where my life has been. Anyways, thank you all for being here again for another Ministry of Science. I can't remember how many this has been. I think this is either 15 or 16. I'm back to not being able to count. 16. Thank you.
Damn, climbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're climbing. We're getting there. One day we're gonna reach the triple digits, and we'll see how far we
Marcus,
come from there.
I noticed today you're almost to 666 followers.
Based.
You gonna turn off following once you get there?
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's like 6.
Yeah, man, you are killing it.
Yo, that's a good number.
I heard you're not
I know.
I heard you're not even doing a podcast until you hit 100. Like they don't even count that in the podcast world.
Wait, are you not live right now?
Yeah, I'm 6 more followers to the
he's
devil
live.
number.
Oh, hell yeah.
Let's go.
Well, for a long time, you had 69 viewers in stream today during the Ministry of Science.
Nice.
No, exactly.
We're
I mean,
hitting all
every
the
time I
meme
looked
numbers
over, it was
today.
like 69.
Damn,
I'm like,
dude, what are
Oh,
you
yeah.
doing right now?
Nice job, Marcus. Nice job.
It's only 68 because Dave left, so Dave made it 69.
Oh shit! Yeah, I didn't see Dave left. Oh yeah, he's
You know
he's
these
about to boot up
numbers.
his stream. What'd you say, Grandma?
So, what did you do to get these numbers?
Oh, I caught a fat raid from Dr. Neuro. We were talking shop earlier when he was streaming. So
Gotcha.
he
The nerds
gave
came
some
through
love.
and stuck around.
That's right.
Nice.
I don't know if Neuro has a pet name for his community, but they've stuck around and they're some cool folks.
Neuro
Hell
nerds. Done.
Neurofurries.
Wait, is Neuro a furry too?
I
Dude,
don't.
what am I saying?
I have no idea.
Oh, self-report.
Oh no.
Metal Gear Solid noise. Exclamation point over my head. Okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. Anyways, yeah, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you both, or thank all of you. There's more than 2 of you. Jesus Christ. See, counting is hard.
Thanks
you,
to
everybody,
only
for
2
being
of you.
here.
It's the lack of
I
oxygen
won't
for the
say
Who
master.
it is, I'll leave it up to you. Y'all get to decide in your own heads.
Hunger
which
Games,
2
go.
people.
Alrighty.
Alrighty.
Adios, man. Have a good stream.
All right, later.
Thank